Listen closely, because what I'm about to share with you changed my entire understanding of money, prosperity, and the invisible laws that govern this universe. For years, I watched people struggle, fight, and exhaust themselves trying to force wealth into their lives through sheer willpower and endless effort, and I watched them fail over and over again. And then I discovered something so profound, so simple, that it sounds almost too good to be true, but I promise you, it isn't. The secret to wealth has nothing to do with working harder, being smarter, or even being luckier than anyone else. The secret is this: wealth is not something you chase, it is something you allow. It is something you speak into existence through the power of your word. And tonight, as you drift into sleep, I'm going to guide you into a state of consciousness where wealth flows to you as naturally as your breath. You see, I learned through my years of studying metaphysics and working with hundreds of students that there is an invisible law at work in this universe, a law just as reliable as gravity. I call it the law of attraction, though it has been known by many names throughout history. This law states that whatever you impress upon your subconscious mind, whatever you truly believe in the deepest parts of yourself, must manifest in your physical reality. Your thoughts are not just fleeting wisps of imagination. They are creative forces. They are magnets. They draw to you the exact circumstances, people, and resources that match their vibration. And here's what most people don't understand. Your subconscious mind is most receptive, most open, most impressionable in those quiet moments just before sleep. This is when the conscious mind, with all its doubts and fears and logical arguments, finally steps aside. This is when we can plant seeds of truth that will grow into your new reality. I want you to understand something fundamental right now. Something that might challenge everything you've been taught about money. Wealth is not scarce. It is not reserved for a special few. It is not something you have to steal from others or fight for with tooth and claw. Wealth is your divine birthright. It is as abundant as the stars in the sky, as plentiful as grains of sand on a beach. The universe is not lacking. God is not lacking. The only lack exists in human consciousness, in the beliefs we carry, in the words we speak, in the stories we tell ourselves about what we deserve and what is possible for us. I once knew a woman who came to me in absolute despair. She had 50 cents to her name, no prospects, no visible way forward. She was convinced that poverty was her destiny, that she was somehow cursed or unworthy. But I taught her something powerful. I taught her that her current circumstances were not her truth. They were simply the outpicturing of her old beliefs, her old words, her old consciousness. And I showed her how to speak a new word, how to claim a new truth. Within weeks, money began flowing to her from the most unexpected sources. An old debt she'd written off was suddenly repaid. A job opportunity appeared out of nowhere. A relative she barely knew left her an inheritance. Was this coincidence? Was this luck? No. This was law. This was the universe responding to her new consciousness, her new word, her new faith. This is what I want for you tonight. As you listen to these affirmations, as you allow them to sink deep into your subconscious mind, you are not just hearing words, you are being reprogrammed at the deepest level. You are being freed from every limiting belief about money that has ever held you back. You are claiming your divine right to wealth, abundance, prosperity, and financial freedom. And the beautiful thing, the miraculous thing, is that you don't have to force this. You don't have to strain or struggle. You simply have to accept it. You simply have to allow it. You simply have to say yes to what has always been waiting for you. So get comfortable now. Release the day. Let your body sink into relaxation. Let your mind become quiet and receptive. And know that as you drift into sleep tonight, profound transformation is happening within you. Every affirmation you hear is planting a seed of prosperity in your subconscious garden. And those seeds will sprout and grow and bear fruit in ways that will astonish you. Wealth is coming to you now. Not because you're forcing it, but because you're finally allowing it. Not because you're worthy of it in the future, but because you have always been worthy. This is your birthright, this is your truth, and tonight we claim it together. Now, before we begin the affirmations that will accompany you into sleep, I want to share with you some truths about prosperity that took me years to understand. Truths that will help you receive the full power of what we're doing here tonight. You see, Most people approach wealth from a place of fear and lack. They worry constantly about not having enough. They look at their bank account and feel anxiety. They think about bills and feel dread. And what happens? The very thing they fear comes upon them, because fear is faith in reverse. Fear is a powerful creative force, just like faith, but it creates what you don't want instead of what you do want. Whatever you give your attention to grows. Whatever you focus on expands. If you focus on lack, you create more lack. If you focus on debt, you create more debt. But if you focus on abundance, if you speak words of prosperity, if you give thanks for the wealth that is already flowing to you, even before you see it with your physical eyes, then you open the floodgates of heaven. I learned this through my own experience, not just through theory or pretty philosophy. There was a time in my life when I struggled financially, when I worried about how I would pay my rent, when I felt the heavy weight of financial insecurity pressing down on me. And in that darkness, I discovered something that changed everything. I discovered that my words had power. I discovered that I could speak a new reality into existence. I began to affirm, every single day, that I was a child of God, and that God's wealth was my wealth, that the universe was abundant, and that abundance was flowing to me now. At first, my logical mind rebelled. It said, "This is foolish. This is denial. Look at your circumstances." But I persisted. I kept speaking my word. I kept affirming my truth. And slowly, miraculously, things began to shift. Money came to me from unexpected sources. Opportunities opened up. Doors that had been closed suddenly swung wide. And I realized that I had tapped into something real, something powerful, something that anyone could access if they understood the law. The law is this: your word is your wand. What you speak, you create. What you affirm, you attract. What you believe in your heart, you will see in your world. And the most powerful time to impress these truths upon your subconscious is right now, as you prepare for sleep, because your subconscious never sleeps. It is always working, always creating, always attracting. And when your conscious mind is quiet, your subconscious is most receptive to new programming, to new beliefs, to new truths. This is why tonight is so important. This is why these hours of affirmations, washing over you as you rest, will create changes in your life that will seem nothing short of miraculous. I want you to understand something that might sound radical. You do not have to earn prosperity. You do not have to prove yourself worthy. You do not have to work yourself to exhaustion to deserve financial abundance. Prosperity is not a reward for being good enough or working hard enough. Prosperity is your natural state. It is what you were born for. It is your divine inheritance. God, the universe, infinite intelligence, whatever name you give to the creative power that sustains all life, this power wants you to prosper. It delights in your abundance. There is no spiritual virtue in poverty. There is no divine reward for struggling and suffering financially. These are lies we've been told, false beliefs that have kept humanity in bondage for centuries. The truth is that you are meant to have everything you need, and more. You are meant to live in comfort, security, and abundance. You are meant to have the resources to fulfill your dreams, to help others, to create beauty and joy in this world. Money is not evil. Money is simply energy. It is a tool. It is a means of exchange. And when it flows to and through you abundantly, you can do tremendous good. You can bless yourself and others. You can create and contribute and make a difference. So, release any guilt or shame about desiring wealth. Release any belief that wanting money is somehow unspiritual or selfish. That belief is a prison, and tonight, we're setting you free. Here's what I discovered in my years of teaching and practice. The universe responds not to your words alone, but to the consciousness behind your words. You can say affirmations all day long, but if deep in your heart you don't believe them, if you're speaking from a place of desperation or doubt, they won't work. The key is to speak from faith, from knowing, from a place of already having what you desire. This is what I call acting as if. You act as if you're already wealthy. You think as if you're already prosperous. You speak as if abundance has already arrived. And when you do this consistently, when you hold this consciousness regardless of what your physical circumstances look like, the universe has no choice but to match that vibration. It must bring you what you believe. This is law. I had a student once who wanted to attract a large sum of money. She needed $20,000 for a specific purpose, and she had no idea where it would come from. But instead of worrying, instead of fretting and stressing, she began to give thanks every day for the $20,000 that was on its way to her. She saw it in her mind's eye. She felt what it would feel like to receive it. She spoke about it as if it had already happened. And do you know what occurred? Within 30 days, she received exactly $20,000 from 3 different unexpected sources. The money literally showed up in her life because she had accepted it in consciousness first. She had spoken the word, she had claimed her good, and the universe delivered. This is available to you too. Everything I'm teaching you, everything you're about to experience tonight, is not theory. It is not wishful thinking. It is not fantasy. It is law, as dependable as any law of physics. But you must cooperate with it. You must align with it. You must stop contradicting it with your doubts and fears and limiting beliefs. And that's exactly what these affirmations will do for you. They will reprogram your subconscious mind. They will replace old patterns of lack with new patterns of abundance. They will shift your vibration from poverty consciousness to prosperity consciousness. And as that shift happens within you, your external world must change to match it. This is not optional. This is how the universe works. Now, I want to speak to something that stops many people from receiving their wealth. It's a pattern I've seen countless times, and it's one of the most insidious blocks to prosperity. It's the belief that you have to figure out how your wealth will come. You look at your current situation and you think, I don't see any way for money to reach me. There's no logical path. There's no visible opportunity. And because you can't see the how, you don't believe it can happen. But listen to me carefully. It is not your job to figure out how. That is the universe's job. That is God's job. Your job is simply to claim your good, to speak your word, to hold the vision, and to be ready to receive. The universe has infinite ways to bring wealth to you, ways you could never imagine or orchestrate with your limited human mind. Your job is to get out of the way and let it happen. I remember a man who came to me desperate for financial help. He had been looking for a job for months with no success. He had sent out hundreds of resumes. He had gone to countless interviews. He was exhausted and discouraged. I told him to stop forcing, stop pushing, stop trying to make it happen through human effort alone. I taught him to affirm every day that his perfect work was seeking him, that the universe was lining up the perfect opportunity, that divine intelligence knew exactly where he needed to be and was bringing him and that opportunity together. He resisted at first. He thought it was too passive, too naive. But he was desperate enough to try. Within 2 weeks, an old colleague called him out of the blue with a job offer that paid twice what he had been hoping for. He hadn't applied for it. He hadn't even known the position existed. It simply came to him because he had stopped blocking the flow with his anxiety and effort. He had allowed the universe to work on his behalf. This is the power of surrender, not the surrender of giving up, but the surrender of letting go, of trusting, of knowing that you are supported by an infinite intelligence that loves you and wants you to thrive. When you combine this surrender with powerful affirmations, when you impress upon your subconscious mind the truth of your prosperity while in a relaxed, receptive state, you become an unstoppable magnet for wealth. And that's exactly what's happening tonight. You're not just listening to words, you're being transformed at the deepest level. You are activating a power that was always within you, waiting for this exact moment to awaken. Think of a woman I knew who discovered her husband had been unfaithful. Everyone expected her to collapse, to become bitter, to seek revenge. Instead, she did something extraordinary. She went into her quiet room and spoke these words: I bless this situation and call forth the divine plan. I release all resentment and claim my perfect good. For weeks, she repeated this practice. Not once did she speak words of condemnation. Not once did she rehearse her grievances to friends. She became a living embodiment of spiritual law. What happened next astounded everyone. Her husband, without any manipulation or pleading, underwent a complete transformation. The other woman simply disappeared from his life. But here's what's even more remarkable. The woman herself changed so profoundly that she became magnetic to opportunity, respect, and abundance in every area of her life. She later told me, I thought I was saving my marriage, but I was actually saving my soul. That's the miracle you're accessing right now. You're not just changing circumstances, you're changing the very consciousness that creates circumstances. Your word is your wand. Every time you speak, you're either building or destroying. Every thought you entertain is either attracting or repelling. This isn't psychology, this is spiritual law, as exact as mathematics. Consider the nature of a seed. When you plant an apple seed, you don't get grapes. When you plant words of limitation, you cannot harvest freedom. When you plant thoughts of lack, you cannot reap abundance. The universe is utterly consistent. It returns to you exactly what you've planted in consciousness. Right now, in this moment, you're planting new seeds. Seeds of faith, seeds of expectation, seeds of absolute knowing that your perfect good is making its way to you. And these seeds are already germinating in the invisible, preparing to burst forth into your visible world with a harvest beyond your imagination. Now you might be looking at your life and thinking, but I don't see any evidence of this harvest. I don't see anything changing. And that's exactly when most people give up. They plant the seed and then dig it up every day to see if it's growing. They speak the word and then immediately contradict it with doubt and fear. They affirm their good in the morning and deny it by afternoon. But I want to tell you something that will change everything. The invisible always precedes the visible. Always, without exception. Before there was light, Spirit said, "Let there be light." Before there was a harvest, there was a seed buried in darkness. Before there was a demonstration, there was a word spoken in faith. You are living in the space between the planting and the harvest. This is sacred ground. This is where your faith is being tested and strengthened. This is where you prove whether you truly believe in the law or whether you're just playing spiritual games. And here's what happens in that in-between space. You must guard your garden with absolute vigilance. Because the weeds of doubt want to choke out your good. The crows of negative conversation want to steal your seeds. The storms of other people's opinions want to wash away your faith. I knew a woman who was demonstrating a new position. She had spoken the word. She had planted the seed. She was absolutely certain it was hers. But then she made the mistake of telling a so-called friend about her expectation. And that friend, full of fear and limitation, said, "Oh, you're being unrealistic. You should be more practical. You should settle for less." And for just a moment, this woman wavered. She felt the cold wind of doubt blow across her garden. But then she remembered the law. She remembered that her word cannot return void. She remembered that what God has prepared for her, no man can take away. So she blessed that friend and silently said, "You have no power over my good. My demonstration is already complete in divine mind. What I have spoken shall come to pass." And she turned away from that toxic conversation and watered her garden with more faith, more expectation, more absolute knowing. Within 2 weeks, she received 3 offers for positions, each one better than what she had even imagined. The universe honors the person who refuses to accept the negative appearance as the final word. When you stand unmoved in your faith, when you continue to see the invisible despite what the visible world screams at you, you are doing the most powerful spiritual work there is. You are literally calling forth substance from the unseen realm. This is not blind optimism. This is not denial. This is spiritual warfare of the highest order. You're not pretending the problem doesn't exist. You're refusing to give it permanence. You're refusing to bow down to it as your Lord and Master. Every time someone says, "Be realistic," what they're really saying is, accept limitation as ultimate truth. But you and I know better. We know that God's reality is the only reality that lasts. The walls may look solid, the diagnosis may look final, the bank account may look empty, but none of these things are the last word. They're simply the current arrangement of energy, and energy responds to consciousness. I've watched people literally walk through walls of impossibility, not because they ignored the wall, but because they acknowledged a higher law. There was a young artist whose work had been rejected by gallery after gallery. Everyone told her the market was oversaturated, that she'd missed her moment, that she should get a real job. And for a while, she believed them. Her paintings gathered dust, her spirit dimmed. But then she remembered something her grandmother had told her. God doesn't plant desires in your heart to torture you. That desire was itself the evidence that fulfillment was possible. She began to speak her word differently. Instead of saying, I hope someone will discover me, she said. The perfect channels are now opening for my work to reach those who need it most. My art is valuable, needed, and sought after. She painted with renewed passion, not from desperation, but from faith. Within 3 months, an interior designer saw her work at a small coffee shop exhibition and ordered 12 pieces for a luxury hotel chain. Her career exploded from that single divine appointment. The desire was the call, the manifestation was the answer, and the space between was where her faith did the heavy lifting. But here's where most people fumble the ball. They confuse waiting with faith. They sit around, arms crossed, tapping their foot impatiently, saying, "Well, I gave it 3 days. Where's my miracle?" That's not faith. That's a spiritual temper tantrum. Real faith is active, it's expectant, it's joyful. It's the difference between a child checking the mailbox every 5 minutes for a birthday card and a child who keeps playing, knowing that when the card arrives, it'll be perfect. You see, when you're truly aligned with your word, waiting doesn't feel like waiting. It feels like preparation, like the quiet hum of machinery working behind the scenes, like the pause before the curtain rises. I've watched people destroy their own demonstrations by picking at them like a scab, checking, doubting, revising, panicking. They speak their word on Monday with conviction, then spend Tuesday through Friday dismantling it with fear. Your word doesn't need you to micromanage it, it needs you to let it breathe. To give it room to unfold in ways more magnificent than your limited imagination could orchestrate. There was a man who spoke the word for right employment. He affirmed daily, "Infinite intelligence opens the perfect door for me. No man can shut it." Simple, clear, non-anxious. For 6 weeks, nothing obvious happened. Friends told him to lower his standards, to take the first thing that came along, to be realistic. He held steady, not from stubbornness, but from knowing, from an inner certainty that his word was already carving the path. Then one afternoon, a former colleague called him out of the blue. A position had opened, tailor-made for his skills, at twice the salary he'd hoped for. It came through a connection he'd completely forgotten about, through a series of events he never could have engineered himself. "I almost gave up," he told me later. But something in me knew the word was working, even when I couldn't see it. That something was faith, not blind faith, intelligent faith. The kind that understands spiritual law as reliably as you understand gravity. You wouldn't jump off a building and expect to float upward. Why? Because you understand the law of gravity. It's not negotiable. It's not personal. It simply is. Well, spiritual law works the same way. When you align your words and thoughts with your desired outcome, manifestation isn't a miracle, it's obedience to law. The problem is, most people treat manifestation like throwing spaghetti at the wall. They try a little affirmation here, a little visualization there, then give up when nothing happens by Thursday. That's not how you build a house, and it's not how you build a new life. Let me tell you about a woman I knew, a talented musician who'd spent years struggling, playing in dingy clubs for pocket change, convinced the music industry was rigged against her. Her entire inner conversation was about unfairness, how other people got breaks she didn't, how talent didn't matter anymore, how the world didn't appreciate real art. And guess what her life reflected back to her? Exactly that reality. One day, she came to me, desperate. "I've tried everything," she said. "Nothing works." I looked at her straight and said, "You haven't tried changing your inner conversation." She was furious. She wanted a shortcut, a magic spell, an introduction to someone important. What she didn't want was to take responsibility for the mental atmosphere she'd been breathing for years. But eventually, desperation won over stubbornness. She started reluctantly at first to speak only of success. Not someday success, present success. She thanked the universe for opportunities before they appeared. She talked about her music as if people were already clamoring for it. It felt false at first, like lying. But she persisted. And here's what happened. Within 3 months, she got a call from a producer who'd heard her music years ago and suddenly remembered her. Within 6 months, she had a recording contract. Within a year, her album charted. Magic? No. Law. She changed the inner conversation, and the outer world rearranged itself to match. This is what I mean by intelligent faith. You're not begging. you're not hoping, you're not wishing on stars, you're activating a law as precise as mathematics. Your word is your wand. But most people are waving it around carelessly, casting spells they don't even realize they're casting. Every time you say, I can't afford it, you're casting a spell of lack. Every time you say, I'm so tired, you're casting a spell of exhaustion. Every time you say, nothing ever works out for me, you're weaving a destiny of disappointment. The ancient mystics knew this. They guarded their words like precious jewels because they understood the power of the spoken decree. In the temples of Egypt, certain words could only be uttered by the initiated, because those words carried frequencies that could alter reality itself. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't analyze whether what you're saying is beneficial or harmful. It simply accepts and executes. It's the most obedient servant you'll ever have, and the most dangerous when given the wrong instructions. I once knew a woman who constantly joked about being forgetful. I'd forget my head if it wasn't attached. She'd laugh. My memory is terrible. She thought these statements were harmless, just self-deprecating humor. Within 2 years, she was showing early signs of cognitive decline. The doctors were baffled by how rapidly it progressed in someone so young. Her words had become her prophecy. Now let me show you something miraculous. You can reverse any negative pattern with the same power that created it. You can unspeak the curses you've spoken over yourself. When you catch yourself saying something limiting, stop immediately. Speak the opposite with conviction. I erase that statement. The truth is, and then declare what you truly desire. Your subconscious will listen to the last instruction given with the most feeling behind it. I've watched people transform chronic illness into radiant health simply by changing their self-talk. I've seen poverty-stricken individuals rise to abundance by refusing to speak words of lack. The method is simple, but it requires vigilance. For the next 7 days, I want you to become a guardian of your words. Imagine every sentence you speak is being carved into stone, permanent and unchangeable. Would you still speak it? This awareness alone will transform your life. Notice how often you speak negatively about your body, your circumstances, your relationships, your future. Each time you do, you're reinforcing the very prison you're trying to escape. Replace I'm so stupid with I'm learning and growing wiser every day. Replace I'm always broke with money flows to me easily and frequently. Replace I'm too old with I'm in my prime and perfect timing. These aren't just positive affirmations floating in the ether. These are commands given to the most powerful creative force you possess, your own subconscious mind connected to divine intelligence. Your subconscious doesn't judge whether your words are true or false, beneficial or harmful. It simply accepts what you persistently tell it and sets about making it your reality. This is why the ancients spoke of the power of blessing and cursing. Your words are literal spells you're casting over your own life. I once knew a woman who would say every single morning, another day, another dollar barely, enough to scrape by. And you know what? That's precisely what she experienced. Her income never exceeded just barely scraping by. Her subconscious heard barely enough and said, your wish is my command. When she finally changed her morning declaration to another day, another abundant blessing, her financial situation transformed within 3 months. Same job, same circumstances, completely different reality. This isn't about lying to yourself. This is about speaking to the reality you're calling forth. You're not denying your present circumstances, you're refusing to give them authority over your future. There's a profound difference. When you say money flows to me easily, you're not pretending your bank account is full when it's empty. You're declaring the spiritual truth that activates the universal law of supply. Your words are setting the mold. Whatever mold you create with your speech, the universe will fill. If you create a mold of limitation, lack, and struggle with your words, that's exactly what will pour into your life. But if you create a mold of abundance, joy, and perfect timing, the universe has no choice but to fill that instead. And here's something most people never realize. Your words don't just affect you, they affect everyone and everything around you. When you speak words of criticism and judgment about others, you're actually poisoning your own atmosphere. You cannot speak negatively about another person without that energy boomeranging back to you. This is spiritual law, as reliable as gravity. Every time you gossip, every time you criticize, Every time you tear someone else down with your words, you're literally setting up obstacles in your own path. The universe doesn't say, "Oh, you were talking about them, not yourself." The universe responds to the vibration you're putting out. You become what you speak about most. This is why the truly wise speak only blessing. Not because they're naive or pretending everything is perfect, but because they understand the creative power they're wielding with every syllable. Your words are setting the atmosphere of your entire existence. They're creating the climate in which all your experiences grow. When you constantly speak of struggle, you create a climate of resistance. When you speak of lack, you create an atmosphere of scarcity. But when you speak prosperity, health, and divine order, you create the fertile ground in which miracles take root. I've watched people talk themselves into illness, bankruptcy, and isolation without ever realizing they were the architects of their own suffering. But I've also witnessed the magnificent reversals that occur when someone finally grasps this principle and begins to deliberately shape their speech. There was a woman who came to me consumed with anxiety about her finances. Every conversation was peppered with declarations of ruin. "I'll never make enough. Money just disappears. I'm terrible with finances." I asked her to undertake a seemingly simple task. For 30 days, speak only what she wished to be true. Not lie about her circumstances, but refuse to verbalize the negative narrative. Instead, declare, "My supply is endless. Money flows to me easily. I am financially sound." She found it nearly impossible at first. The habit of negative speech was so deeply ingrained that she had to catch herself dozens of times each day. But she persisted. And within those 30 days, she received an unexpected inheritance from a distant relative she barely knew existed, was offered a higher position at work, and discovered a tax refund she'd overlooked. The money had been trying to reach her all along, but her words had created an impenetrable barrier. This is not magic, this is law. The law of mental equivalence working through the power of the spoken word. You cannot hold one vision in your heart while speaking its opposite with your mouth and expect the universe to deliver your heart's desire. There must be alignment. Your word must match your faith. Your declarations must harmonize with your inner vision. When there's this sacred alignment between thought, word, and faith, manifestation becomes inevitable. Consider the master sculptor who sees the finished statue in the uncarved marble. They don't stand before the stone and say, "Well, I hope something decent emerges." No, they see exactly what they're creating before they ever lift the chisel. Their words to their apprentices describe the finished work with absolute certainty. Here will be the curve of the shoulder, here the turn of the head. This is how you must speak about your desires. Your declarations are not wishes, they are announcements of what already exists in the spiritual dimension, waiting to take form in the material world. When you understand this, your entire relationship with speaking changes. You no longer beg or plead, you state and claim. I've watched people sabotage magnificent demonstrations simply through casual contradictory speech. They'll do their spiritual work in the morning, affirming abundance and prosperity, then spend the afternoon telling friends, "I'm so broke. I don't know how I'll manage." Do you see the contradiction? You cannot build with one hand while tearing down with the other. Every conversation becomes a spiritual practice when you recognize the power you're wielding. This doesn't mean you must speak in elevated, formal tones all day. It means you become conscious of the creative force flowing through your words. Even in casual conversation, you're either reinforcing your good or undermining it. I knew a woman who transformed her entire health situation by changing one habitual phrase. For years, she would say, "I always catch whatever's going around." It was her automatic response when people mentioned illness. Then she became conscious of this pattern and replaced it with, "I'm so grateful for my vibrant health and strong immunity." Within months, her pattern of constant illness completely shifted. Same woman, different words, different results. This is why gossip is so spiritually dangerous, not because it's morally wrong, but because it's creatively destructive. When you speak negatively about another, you're invoking that very energy into your own experience. The universe doesn't distinguish between talking about someone else's problems and claiming them for yourself. Whatever you're giving attention to through speech, you're magnetizing into your own field. This is why gossip is so spiritually dangerous. When you gather with others to discuss someone's misfortunes, their failures, their struggles, you're creating a collective vibration of lack and limitation. And that collective energy is far more powerful than individual thought. You're essentially holding a prayer circle for negativity, and every participant becomes a receptor for what they're broadcasting. I've watched friendships dissolve, not through direct conflict, but through the slow poison of negative speech about others. One woman would meet with her friend regularly, and their entire conversation centered on criticizing mutual acquaintances. They bonded over judgment, created intimacy through shared negativity. Within months, both women experienced betrayals in their own circles, found themselves the subject of gossip, and eventually turned on each other with the same venom they'd directed outward. The law is impersonal and exact. It gave them precisely what they'd been cultivating through their words. If you want to transform your relationships instantly, adopt this practice. Speak only blessing about others, or remain silent. When someone attempts to pull you into gossip, refuse the invitation. You might say, "I'm sure they're doing their best," or simply change the subject. You're not being self-righteous. You're protecting your energetic field from contamination. And here's what happens when you consistently speak well of others, even those who've wronged you. You create a shield of protection around your own reputation. The universe ensures that what you give, you receive. Speak blessing, and blessing returns. Defend others in their absence, and you'll find yourself defended. I knew a man who made it his practice never to engage in criticism of others. When colleagues gossiped in his presence, he would quietly find something positive to say about the person being discussed, or excuse himself from the conversation. Within a year, he'd earned such a reputation for integrity that when false accusations were leveled against him, not a single person believed them. His history of gracious speech about others created a fortress of goodwill around him. Your words about others are always words about yourself. Choose them as carefully as you'd choose words spoken directly to the divine, because that's precisely what they are. The mystics understood something most people miss entirely. They knew that gossip, slander, and criticism are not social acts, they're spiritual suicide. Every harsh word you speak about another person is a sword you thrust into your own future. Every blessing you speak creates a garden where your own dreams can grow. I once counseled a woman who wondered why doors kept closing in her face. She'd arrive for job interviews and feel immediate coldness. She'd meet new people and sense their walls go up. "Why does everyone reject me before they know me?" she asked. I asked her to tell me about her social habits. Within minutes, the truth emerged. She spent her evenings on phone calls dissecting everyone she knew. Her conversations were surgical procedures where she cut apart reputations and examined the pieces. She'd created a reputation as someone who couldn't be trusted, and that reputation preceded her into every room. I told her what I'm telling you now. You cannot tear down others and build yourself up. It defies the architecture of reality. The universe doesn't work that way. When you diminish someone else, you diminish the whole, and you are part of that whole. When you elevate someone else, you elevate the whole, and you rise with it. She made a decision that day. For 40 days, she would speak no criticism of anyone. She would catch herself when the old habit arose and redirect her words toward appreciation. The first week was agony for her. She had to change the subject constantly. She had to end phone calls early. She lost interest in certain friendships that were built entirely on mutual criticism. But something remarkable began to happen. New people entered her life. Different conversations emerged, and opportunities that had been closed to her suddenly swung open. This is the law in action. This is not moral philosophy, this is engineering. You're working with forces as real as electricity. Touch them correctly, they illuminate your life. Touch them incorrectly, they burn you. Most people spend their entire lives trying to manipulate conditions when they should be adjusting their consciousness. They push against closed doors when they should be becoming the person for whom doors open automatically. I knew a man who complained bitterly about his business competitors. He called them ruthless, dishonest, cutthroat. For 3 years, his business struggled while theirs prospered. Then one day, exhausted from fighting, he simply stopped. He blessed his competitors. He wished them well. He thanked them for showing him where he still held fear and lack in his consciousness. Within 6 months, 2 of those competitors approached him with partnership offers. The third referred clients to him. The external battlefield had been an internal war all along. You see, your enemies are always aspects of yourself you haven't loved yet. The qualities you despise in others are the qualities you've rejected in yourself. Make peace with them, and the wars outside cease instantly. This is the great secret they don't teach you. Forgiveness isn't moral virtue, it's metaphysical necessity. Holding resentment is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. The bitterness you carry doesn't hurt them, it blocks your good. Every grudge is a dam stopping your supply. I've watched people heal incurable diseases the moment they forgave. I've seen fortunes return the instant someone released an old hurt. The universe cannot flow through a clenched fist. You must open your hand to receive. And here's what makes it easier. You're not forgiving them because they deserve it. You're forgiving them because you deserve peace. You're clearing the channel so your good can reach you. It's entirely selfish in the highest sense. Release that person. Release that situation. Release that old story about what they did and what it meant. None of it can travel with you into your new life anyway. Say it aloud right now. I forgive completely and I am free. Feel how those words lighten you. Feel how they unlock something that's been frozen. Your past has no power except what you give it. This present moment is virgin territory. Nothing that happened before needs to happen again, unless you insist on replaying it. You've been asking the universe for money all wrong. I need to tell you something that might upset everything you thought you knew about manifesting wealth. For years, you've been trained to beg, to plead, to ask politely, and wait with your hands folded, hoping the universe might notice you among millions of other voices. But here's what nobody tells you. The universe doesn't respond to begging. It responds to command. I learned this truth not in a moment of enlightenment, but in a moment of absolute desperation. I had been studying metaphysics, teaching these principles, believing I understood the spiritual laws, when suddenly I found myself utterly broke, not just financially stretched, but genuinely without means. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew shattered. Because if I truly understood these laws, why was I struggling? Why wasn't my polite asking working? Then something shifted. I stopped asking. I stopped begging. I stopped waiting for permission from an external force to give me what I needed. Instead, I spoke with the authority that was always mine. I commanded. And let me be very clear about what I mean by command, because this isn't about arrogance or forcing anything. This is about recognizing who you truly are in relation to the universe. You are not a servant begging at the feet of a master. You are a divine being, speaking the creative word that moves energy itself. The difference between asking and commanding changed everything for me. Within days, money appeared from sources I couldn't have imagined. Old debts were suddenly repaid. Unexpected opportunities opened. But more importantly, I understood something profound about how this universe actually works. It doesn't reward the meek who whisper their desires, hoping not to disturb anyone. It responds to those who speak with the conviction of someone who knows, without doubt, that what they declare must manifest. Right now, you're going to learn the exact words I use, the precise, spiritual technology that commands $100,000 into your experience. Not requests it, not hopes for it, commands it. And before you think this sounds too bold or too impossible, let me remind you of something. Every single dollar that exists, every resource, every abundance in this world came from the same invisible substance. The only difference between those who have and those who lack is knowing how to speak the word that crystallizes that substance into form. You see, wealth is not something you chase, it's something you claim. There's a vast difference between pursuing and possessing in consciousness. When you pursue, you're always behind, always reaching, always in the energy of lack. But when you claim, you stand as the owner even before the physical evidence appears. I once knew a woman who had been struggling financially for years. She'd tried everything, working longer hours, cutting expenses, affirming prosperity in a half-hearted way. Nothing changed. Then one day, something shifted in her understanding. She stopped asking for money and started commanding it. She would stand before her mirror each morning and say with absolute conviction, "Infinite substance, I command you to manifest as immediate and abundant supply." She didn't beg. She didn't plead. She commanded as one who knows her divine authority. Within 3 weeks, money began flowing to her from sources she'd never imagined. An old debt someone owed her was suddenly repaid. An opportunity for work appeared that paid triple her previous rate. A relative she barely knew left her an inheritance. The universe rearranged itself to match her command. This is how spiritual law works. It doesn't respond to your desperation. It responds to your conviction. Now, here's what most people get wrong about commanding prosperity. They think it means shouting louder or forcing their will onto the universe. That's not command, that's desperation wearing a mask. True command is quiet. It's calm. It's the immovable knowing that what you speak must come to pass because you're speaking from your divine identity, not your human panic. When you say, infinite substance manifest now, you're not trying to convince the universe. You're simply stating what is already true in the invisible realm. You're calling it forth into visibility. Think of it like this. The electricity is already in the walls of your home. You don't beg the electricity to work. You simply flip the switch with the absolute expectation that the light will turn on. That's command. That's faith in action. And when you live from this place of command, something shifts in the fabric of reality around you. Doors that were bolted shut suddenly swing open. People who never noticed you before start offering help. Money flows from unexpected sources. It's not magic, it's law. I remember a woman who came to me absolutely desperate. Her husband had left her with 3 children and no income. She was consumed with fear, rehearsing disaster scenarios every waking moment. I looked at her and said, "Stop declaring your poverty. Stop speaking your lack. You are making it permanent with your words." She protested, "But it's true, I have nothing." "Then, change what's true," I told her. "Command your good to come forth." She started speaking differently. Every morning, before her feet hit the floor, she would declare, "Infinite Spirit, open the way for my immediate supply. Let all that is mine by divine right now reach me in great avalanches of abundance." She didn't beg. She didn't plead. She commanded with the authority of one who knows she is a daughter of the Most High. Within 2 weeks, a letter arrived. A distant relative she barely remembered had passed away and left her a substantial inheritance. But here's what's crucial. The relative had died 6 months earlier. The inheritance had always been hers. Her command didn't create it. Her command cleared the channel so it could reach her. This is how most of your good works. It's already en route to you, but your fear, your doubt, your contradictory statements are creating blockages in the channel. You're damming up your own river with debris of negative words. Think about how you speak about your body. "I always get sick in winter. I have a bad back. I'm getting old." Every single one of those statements is a command to your subconscious mind, which serves you faithfully by manifesting exactly what you've decreed. Now imagine speaking this way instead. "My body is a temple of the living God, renewed and restored daily. Divine life flows through every cell of my being." Can you feel the difference? One set of words tears down, the other builds up. This isn't just positive thinking, my friends. This is spiritual law. You are literally commanding the substance of your body with every word you speak. Your cells are listening, your organs are responding, your entire physical system reorganizes itself, according to the blueprint you provide through your words. I once knew a woman who was told she would never walk again. The doctors had given their verdict. Her family had accepted it. Everyone spoke of her condition as permanent, as fixed, as unchangeable. But this woman understood something they did not. She began to speak differently, not to convince others, but to instruct her own body. Every morning she would say, "My legs are strong and perfect. I walk in divine order. Every nerve responds to God's perfect plan." Her family thought she had lost her mind. The nurses smiled politely, but sadly. Yet within 6 months, she was taking her first steps. Within a year, she walked without assistance. The same doctors who pronounced her condition permanent now called it a miracle. But it wasn't a miracle in the sense they meant. It was law. Spiritual law operating through the power of the word. She stopped agreeing with limitation and began decreeing perfection. Her body had no choice but to respond. You see, your subconscious mind cannot argue. It cannot debate. It simply accepts what you repeatedly tell it and sets about making it true. When you say, "I'm so sick," your subconscious says, "Yes, Master, we shall create more sickness." When you say, "Divine health is my birthright," your Your subconscious says, yes, master. We shall manifest health. This is why people remain stuck in the same patterns year after year. They are hypnotizing themselves daily with their own negative declarations. They rehearse their problems. They describe their limitations. They prophesy their failures. And then they wonder why nothing changes. Your word is the most powerful force in your life, and you're wielding it unconsciously every single day. I once knew a woman who would say, every morning without fail, I just know something bad is going to happen today. And wouldn't you know it, her day would unravel in the most predictable ways. A missed train, a rude encounter, a lost opportunity. She'd come to me each week and say, see, I was right, I'm just unlucky. But she wasn't unlucky, she was obedient to her own word. The universe doesn't judge your words as positive or negative. It simply says, your wish is my command. When you declare, I can't afford that, the universe arranges circumstances to prove you right. When you say, nobody respects me, you magnetize experiences that confirm that belief. You are legislating your reality with every syllable. This is why I tell my students, you must become vigilant about what comes out of your mouth. Not paranoid, vigilant. There's a difference. Paranoia is fear-based. Vigilance is power-based. It's the recognition that you are speaking things into existence, whether you realize it or not. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Most people think they can offset negative speech with positive thinking. They'll say something destructive, then quickly think, but I don't really mean that, let me tell you, it doesn't work that way. The spoken word carries a vibrational frequency that thought alone cannot match. Speaking engages your entire being, your breath, your body, your energy field. It's a commitment. It's a decree. This is why affirmations, when done correctly, are so transformative. You're not just thinking differently, you're vibrating differently. You're instructing every cell in your body, every particle of your energy, to align with a new truth. But here's the trap most people fall into. They treat affirmations like magic spells they can recite without belief. They stand in front of the mirror and say, I am abundant, while their inner voice screams, yeah, right. That's not affirmation, that's lying to yourself. And the universe knows the difference. True affirmation requires a shift in identification. You must speak from the reality you wish to inhabit, not from the reality you're trying to escape. When you say, I am prosperous, you're not pretending, you're not lying to yourself. You're recognizing a spiritual truth that exists beyond your current circumstances. Prosperity is your divine inheritance. The affirmation isn't creating it, it's aligning you with what already is. I once worked with a woman who came to me in absolute desperation. Her business had failed, her savings were gone. She was facing eviction, and yet I asked her to do something that seemed impossible, to affirm abundance while staring at complete lack. But Florence, she said, isn't that denial? Isn't that just burying my head in the sand? No, denial is refusing to acknowledge your circumstances. Affirmation is refusing to be defined by them. She began to practice. Every morning, before the fear could grip her throat, she would stand before her mirror and declare, Infinite Spirit, open the way for my immediate supply. Let all that is mine by divine right now reach me in great avalanches of abundance. The first few days, nothing happened. The eviction notice, T, still sat on her table. The creditors still called, but something subtle was shifting inside her. The panic was loosening its hold. A strange certainty was taking root. Within 2 weeks, an old colleague reached out with a freelance opportunity. Within a month, that opportunity had doubled. Within 3 months, she had not only paid her rent, but had rebuilt her business on an entirely new foundation. Was it magic? No, it was alignment. You see, when you're vibrating at the frequency of desperation, you cannot perceive opportunities that exist at the frequency of abundance. Your consciousness is literally blind to them. The affirmations didn't create new opportunities. They opened her eyes to see what was already there. This is why I say, change your words, change your world. But here's where most people stumble. They treat affirmations like a part-time hobby. They say them once in the morning, and then spend the rest of the day contradicting them with worry, doubt, and negative expectation. You cannot affirm abundance at 9 in the morning, and then spend 9 hours speaking poverty. Your subconscious mind is listening to everything. It's recording every word, every thought, every emotional tone. I learned this lesson the hard way many years ago when I was first beginning to understand these principles. I would do my affirmations faithfully every morning. I would declare my prosperity, affirm my abundance, speak my good into existence. And then I would spend the entire day contradicting everything I had just declared. Someone would ask me how I was doing, and I'd say, "Oh, getting by. You know how tough things are right now." I'd look at my bank account and say, "I never have enough." I'd see a beautiful dress in a shop window and think, "I could never afford that." And then I wondered why my affirmations weren't working. The truth hit me like lightning one afternoon. I was doing affirmations for abundance while living in a constant state of lack consciousness. I was trying to build a house of prosperity on a foundation of poverty thinking. It doesn't work. It cannot work. Your subconscious mind doesn't differentiate between your morning affirmations and your afternoon complaints. It simply records everything and creates accordingly. If you spend 5 minutes affirming abundance and 10 hours speaking lack, guess which message is going to dominate? The one you repeat most frequently, the one you feel most deeply. This is why guarding your words throughout the entire day is not optional. It's essential. It's the very foundation of demonstration. Now, I want you to become fiercely aware of your habitual speech patterns. Most people have no idea how negatively they speak all day long. They're on automatic pilot, repeating the same limiting phrases they've said for years. "I can't afford it. That's just my luck. Nothing ever works out for me. I always struggle with money. I never get what I want." These are not harmless statements. These are commands to your subconscious mind. These are declarations of what you expect to experience. And your subconscious mind is faithful. It will move heaven and earth to prove you right. I challenge you today to catch yourself every single time you're about to speak a word of limitation. Before you say, "I can't afford it," stop yourself. Rephrase it. Say instead, "That's not a priority for me right now." Or, "I'm choosing to invest my resources elsewhere." Do you see the difference? The energy is completely different. One statement declares permanent lack. The other declares choice and power. When you understand this distinction, you stop arguing with what is and start creating what will be. I had a client who would constantly say, "I can't afford healthy food." She said it automatically, defensively, as if I'd accused her of something. One day, I asked her a simple question. If someone gave you $50 right now and told you it could only be spent on groceries, what would you buy? Her face lit up immediately. She rattled off a list. Fresh vegetables, good quality protein, organic eggs, berries. She knew exactly what she wanted. The knowledge was already there. The desire was already there. "So you do know how to afford healthy food," I said gently. "You're simply choosing not to prioritize it with your current resources." I watched the shift happen in real time. Her shoulders dropped. Her expression changed from defensive to contemplative. She wasn't being attacked. She was being invited to see her power. Within 2 weeks, she'd rearranged her budget. She cut her streaming subscriptions. She started meal planning. She discovered a farmer's market with incredible prices. Nothing about her income had changed, but everything about her relationship with money had transformed. Because she stopped declaring permanent inability and started recognizing temporary choice. This principle applies to everything in your life that feels stuck. "I'm not a morning person" becomes, "I haven't yet built a morning routine that works for me." "I'm bad with technology" becomes, "I haven't invested time in learning these tools." Yet, "I can't lose weight" becomes, "I haven't found the approach that fits my body and lifestyle." Do you feel the difference? One version is a prison sentence. The other is simply a status update that can change tomorrow. Your words are not just describing your reality, they are prescribing your reality. They're writing the script that your subconscious mind follows with absolute obedience. When you declare "I can't," your subconscious hears "I must not." It immediately begins organizing all your behaviors, thoughts, and circumstances to prove that statement true. It will filter out opportunities. It will amplify obstacles. It will make you blind to solutions that are standing right in front of you. And here's the part that most people don't understand. Your subconscious doesn't. It distinguishes between what you're affirming and what you're denying. When you say, "I am not afraid of failure," your subconscious hears "afraid" and "failure." It takes those words and runs with them. This is why I teach you to speak in the affirmative. Not what you don't want, but what you do want. Not, I will not be poor, but I am prosperous. Not, I hope I don't mess this up, but I am divinely guided in this endeavor. Your words are setting the trajectory of your readers' life every single day. Every conversation you have with yourself is either building your palace or digging your grave. Now, let me share something that will revolutionize the way you approach challenges. When an obstacle appears in your life, and they will appear, your immediate response reveals everything about your inner state. Most people see an obstacle and immediately begin to complain. They call their friends to rehearse the problem. They post about it. They think about it constantly. And what are they doing? They're watering that obstacle. They're feeding it. They're giving it power and permanence in their experience. But someone who understands spiritual law does something entirely different. They see the obstacle and they say, "This is temporary. This is an illusion. The truth is that my good cannot be withheld from me." They speak to that mountain. They command it to move. Not with force, not with anxiety, but with calm certainty. Jesus said you could speak to a mountain and tell it to cast itself into the sea. He wasn't being poetic. He was teaching you a practical principle. That mountain, that obstacle, has no power except what you give it through your recognition of it. I've watched people dissolve seemingly impossible situations simply by withdrawing their fear and speaking words of faith. The situation didn't change because they forced it to change. It changed because they changed their relationship to it. One woman came to me absolutely distraught. Her husband he left her. Her finances were in ruins. She was on the verge of losing her home. And she kept saying, "I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do." I stopped her right there. "That's the problem," I said. You keep affirming that you don't know. Instead, affirm that infinite intelligence within you knows exactly what to do, and the way is being revealed to you now. She looked at me like I was asking her to lie. "But I really don't know," she protested. "Then stop saying it," I told her. "Every time you say I don't know, you're closing the door to the answer. Say instead, I am divinely guided. The perfect solution is revealing itself to me now." She began to practice this. Within 2 weeks, an unexpected opportunity appeared. Within a month, her entire situation had transformed. Not through struggle, but through alignment. The spiritual law operates with mathematical precision, but it requires one thing most people refuse to give: complete surrender of the struggle. See, we've been taught that surrender means defeat, that letting go means giving up, but this is the great misunderstanding that keeps abundance at arm's length. True surrender is not passive. It's the most powerful action you can take. When you surrender your anxiety about money, you're not abandoning your desires. You're removing the energetic blocks that prevent their manifestation. You're saying to the universe, "I trust your timing more than I trust my panic." I've watched people transform their financial situations overnight simply by releasing their death grip on outcomes. A man once told me he'd been desperately seeking employment for 8 months. Every day was consumed with anxiety, checking job boards, sending desperate applications. The energy of lack permeated everything he did. I asked him to stop, completely. For 3 days, I told him to do something that terrified him, act as if the perfect position was already secured. He walked differently. He spoke differently. He stopped checking job listings 20 times a day. He focused instead on preparation, updating his skills, organizing his workspace, even buying new professional attire as an act of faith. Within those 3 days, a former colleague reached out completely unprompted. A position had opened that hadn't even been advertised yet. The salary exceeded what he'd been desperately applying for. This wasn't coincidence. This was law. The moment he released the stranglehold of desperation, he became magnetic to opportunity. His energy shifted from "I need" to "I'm ready." And the universe responds to readiness with remarkable speed. Your predominant vibration is always creating your experience. When you're vibrating lack, you magnetize more lack. When you're vibrating abundance, even before physical evidence appears, you magnetize abundance. This is why affirmations fail for most people. They speak words of prosperity while feeling the terror of poverty. The feeling always wins. The universe responds to your energetic signature, not your words. If you want to change your financial reality, you must first change your internal state. You must cultivate the feeling of already having what you seek. You must practice the vibration of abundance until it becomes your natural frequency. This isn't pretending. It's not toxic positivity. It's aligning your inner world with the reality you wish to experience in your outer world. The bridge between where you are and where you want to be is built with the energy you emit right now in this very moment. Let me tell you what most people get wrong about this work. They think that because they've said an affirmation once or twice or even 100 times, the universe should now deliver, but that's not how this works. This isn't a vending machine where you insert coins of positive thinking and out pops your dream life. The real transformation happens when you stop performing positivity and start embodying the Kuerti Gao frequency of your desire. There's a difference between saying, "I am abundant," while your body is tense with anxiety about bills, and saying, "I am abundant," while your nervous system relaxes into the truth of infinite supply. Your subconscious mind doesn't respond to the words you speak. It responds to the feeling state beneath those words. It responds to what you genuinely believe when no one is watching, when you're alone with your thoughts at 3 in the morning. I've watched people speak affirmations with clenched fists and wondered why nothing changes. The words are right, but the energy is all wrong. It's like trying to attract butterflies while emanating the frequency of a thunderstorm. The mismatch is the problem. This is where true spiritual work begins, not in the speaking, but in the becoming. Not in the declaration, but in the dissolution of everything inside you that contradicts what you're declaring. When I say I am divinely protected, I don't just mouth the words. I feel into the spaciousness of that protection. I allow my shoulders to drop. I let my breath deepen. I notice how my body wants to respond to that truth, and I give it permission to relax into safety. This is active faith. This is conscious creation. This is how you actually impress your subconscious mind with new patterns. And here's what happens when you do this consistently. Your external world begins to shift, not because you forced it to, but because you've stopped radiating the frequency that was holding the old reality in place. You become magnetic to circumstances, people, and opportunities that match your new inner state. Let me tell you about a woman I knew who came to me absolutely convinced she would never be financially secure. She had all the evidence to prove it: debt, no savings, a job that barely paid enough. But something shifted in her after one of our sessions. She began to practice what I call living from the wish fulfilled. Every morning, instead of checking her bank account with dread, she would sit quietly and truly feel what it would be like to have more than enough, not in some distant future, but right now. She imagined opening her mail without fear, paying her bills with ease, even treating herself to small luxuries without guilt. She didn't deny her current reality, but she stopped giving it all her emotional energy. Within 3 months, something remarkable happened. She received an unexpected promotion. A relative paid off one of her debts as a gift. She found money-saving opportunities she'd never noticed before. But here's what she told me that I'll never forget. The money changed, yes, but I changed first. I stopped feeling poor before anything in my outer world shifted. This is the missing piece most people overlook. They want the evidence before they change the feeling. But the universe doesn't work that way. The feeling must come first. You must become it before you see it. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but Florence, isn't this just pretending? Isn't this denial of reality? No, my dear, this is not denial, this is selection. You're not pretending your current circumstances don't exist. You're simply choosing to stop feeding them with your attention and emotional power. You're withdrawing your investment in lack and placing it in abundance instead. Think of it this way. A gardener doesn't stare at weeds all day, worrying about them, giving them attention. The gardener focuses on what they want to grow, waters those seeds, and trusts the process. The weeds naturally fade when they're no longer fed. Your circumstances are the same. What you stop feeding must eventually starve. What you consistently nourish must grow. This is why those who transform their lives always speak of a turning point, a moment when they stopped arguing for their limitations and started claiming their good. They didn't wait for perfect conditions. They didn't wait until they felt ready. They made a decision, and they held to it with the tenacity of someone who knows their very life depends on it. Because it does. You see, the universe doesn't respond to your desperation. It responds to your conviction. It doesn't answer your begging. It answers your assumption. When you beg, you're affirming lack. When you assume, you're affirming fulfillment. The vibrational difference between these two states is the difference between repelling your good and magnetizing it. I've watched people pray for years without result, then shift their prayer from please give me to thank you for and see manifestation within weeks. The external request was the same. The internal position was completely different. One came from poverty consciousness, the other came from abundance consciousness. And the universe, being a perfect mirror, reflected back exactly what was being transmitted. This is not theory, this is law. As impersonal and reliable as gravity, you don't get what you want. You get what you are. And what you are is determined not by your circumstances, but by your habitual mental state, your dominant frequency, the story you've agreed to live inside. So the question is never, what do I want? The question is, who must I become to already have it? And then, more importantly, am I willing to become that person before I see the evidence? Most people are not. They want the evidence first. They want the money in the bank before they feel abundant. They want the relationship before they feel loved. They want the success before they feel worthy. And so they wait and wait and wait. And the waiting itself becomes the affirmation that keeps their good at bay. But you, if you're still with me, if these words are resonating in that deep place where truth lives, you are not most people. You've been chosen by your own readiness to hear this message. And now you must choose whether you will apply it. Will you dare to praise before you see the victory? If you speak thanks before the gift arrives? Will you walk in the assumption of fulfillment while the old forms are still crumbling around you? This is the narrow gate. This is the eye of the needle. This is where faith becomes the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. You see, the world will tell you to hedge your bets, to have a backup plan, to keep one foot in the old story while you cautiously test the new one. But that is not faith. That is fear dressed up in wisdom's clothing. Real faith is exclusive. It refuses to entertain alternatives. It closes the door on Plan B because it knows that the moment you create an escape route, you've already decided that Plan A might fail. I knew a woman who declared prosperity but kept a secret savings account just in case. She called it being responsible. But what she was really saying was, God, I don't trust you. And the universe, which mirrors our true beliefs, gave her exactly what she was preparing for more. Reasons to worry, more situations that required that emergency fund. The money came and went, like waves that never lifted her boat, because she was anchored in doubt. Then one day, exhausted by her own contradiction, she made a radical decision. She tithed from that secret account. Not 10%, everything. She gave it all to the vision she claimed she believed in. Do you know what happened? Within a week, 3 opportunities appeared. Opportunities that had existed all along, but that she couldn't see because she was looking backward, protecting her retreat. This is the law. What you fear, you create. What you protect against, you attract. What you prepare for, you experience. So I ask you now, what are you still hedging? Where are you keeping your backup plan? The kingdom requires your whole heart, not your leftovers after fear has taken its share. Stop negotiating with doubt. Stop explaining to people why you need to be realistic. Realism is just a grace. Socially acceptable word for limited thinking. You were not born to be realistic. You were born to be magnificent. And magnificence doesn't happen in the safety zone. It happens at the edge, where faith meets the invisible and declares, even though I cannot see it, I know it is done. This is your moment. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when circumstances improve. Now. I've watched people struggle with money their entire lives, and it breaks my heart because the answer has been sitting right in front of them the whole time. They work themselves to exhaustion, they worry, they scrimp, they save, and still prosperity seems to dance just beyond their fingertips. But here's what I've learned, and what I'm about to share with you today. Money doesn't respond to your hard work alone. Money responds to your word. Your spoken word carries a power so tremendous, so absolutely life-changing, that most people never tap into it because they simply don't believe it could be that simple. But I'm here to tell you, it is that simple. Not easy, perhaps, but beautifully, wonderfully simple. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is just more positive thinking fluff, let me tell you something. I've seen this work in my own life and in the lives of countless others. I've seen people on the brink of financial ruin speak certain words with conviction and watch as opportunities, checks, and abundance literally hunt them down, not because they wished for it, not because they worked harder, but because they aligned their words with the infinite supply of the universe. You see, every word you speak is a seed planted in the invisible realm, and that seed must produce after its kind. It's law. It's not magic. It's not wishful thinking. It's spiritual law as reliable as gravity. Today, I'm going to give you the exact phrases that will open the floodgates of prosperity in your life. But more than that, I'm going to show you why they work, how to speak them so they carry power, and what's been blocking your financial good all this time. Because here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. It's not the economy keeping you broke. It's not your boss, your circumstances, or even your bank account. It's the words that have been coming out of your mouth day after day, year after year. You've been decreeing lack without even knowing it, and the universe, being the faithful servant it is, has been saying yes to every word. Let me start by telling you about a woman I knew who came to me absolutely desperate. She had $30 to her name, rent due in 3 days, and no prospects. She was speaking defeat with every breath. I hear myself saying there's no way out, she told me. I keep affirming poverty every time I open my mouth. And I said to her, then we're going to change what comes out of that mouth starting right now. I gave her a phrase, just one simple phrase, and I told her to say it 50 times a day with feeling, with conviction, as if it were already true. Within 2 days, not 3, not a week, but 2 days, she received an unexpected check from a source she'd completely forgotten about. It covered her rent with plenty left over. Coincidence? I don't believe in coincidences anymore. I believe in spiritual law. The universe was waiting for me to take that first step in faith. It was waiting for me to stop begging and start commanding. Because here's what I didn't understand then. When you're desperate, when you're pleading, when you're wringing your hands and hoping you're actually pushing away the very thing you want. Think about it. When you beg someone for something, what does that communicate? It says you don't believe you deserve it. It says you're coming from lack, from poverty consciousness, from a belief that there isn't enough, and the universe doesn't respond to begging, it responds to declaration. I started to see this everywhere once my eyes were opened. I watched people sabotage their own success with their words. I hope I can pay my bills this month. I'll try to get that job. Maybe things will work out. Hope. Try. Maybe. These are words of doubt, dressed up as optimism, and I realized I had been doing this my entire life. Every time I said, I hope, I was really saying, I doubt. Every time I said, I'll try, I was leaving the back door open for failure. I was hedging my bets against myself. So I began an experiment. I started speaking as if what I wanted was already done. Not someday, not if I was lucky. Now, already accomplished in the spiritual realm, simply waiting to manifest in the physical. Instead of, I hope I get that money, I said, I give thanks that the money that is mine by divine right now comes to me in perfect ways. Instead of, maybe I'll meet the right person, I declared, Infinite Spirit, open the way for my right work, my right place, my right relationships. It felt ridiculous at first. Who was I to make such bold declarations? Who was I to speak with such certainty when my bank account said otherwise, when my circumstances screamed the opposite? But then I remembered, circumstances are effects, not causes. They're the printout, not the program, and I was learning to change the program. The miracles started small, a check in the mail I wasn't expecting, an opportunity that came out of nowhere, a problem that resolved itself in the most unexpected way. And each time, I practiced seeing it not as luck, but as law. I started to notice patterns. The universe wasn't random, it was rhythmic. When I aligned my thoughts with what I desired, circumstances arranged themselves. When I caught myself in fear or doubt, I would immediately speak a word of truth to redirect the energy. There was one particular situation that showed me just how precise this law could be. I had been holding resentment towards someone who owed me money. Every time I thought of this person, my chest would tighten. I would rehearse conversations in my mind, imagining confrontations, justifying my anger. Then, one day, I caught myself. I saw what I was doing. I was giving the situation my full attention, my emotional energy, my creative power. And what was I creating? More of the same, stuck, frustrating dynamic. So I changed my approach entirely. Instead of demanding, I surrendered. Instead of rehearsing arguments, I affirmed. I give thanks for the immediate, complete, and perfect solution to this situation in divine order. I said it without forcing belief, without straining. I simply planted the seed and let it go. Within 3 days, the money arrived. Not from the person I expected, but through a completely different channel, a refund I'd forgotten about, a payment for work I'd done months prior. The amount was exact to the penny. This is what I mean when I say the universe is literal. It doesn't care about your logic or your plans. It responds to your vibration, your expectation, your word. The how is none of your business. Your business is to know what you want and to assume the feeling of already having it. Now let me be clear, this isn't about manipulating reality or forcing outcomes. It's about cooperation. You are working with invisible forces that are far more intelligent than your conscious mind. Your role is to stay in your own lane. Clarify the desire, elevate the feeling, speak the word, then release it. When you try to force the how, you're like someone who insists on rowing a sailboat while the wind is already blowing in your favor. You're exhausting yourself needlessly. I once knew a woman who wanted to sell her home. She had a clear vision, a buyer who would appreciate what she'd built, a smooth closing, and the exact amount she needed for her next chapter. But then she got in her own way. She started micromanaging every showing, interrogating every potential buyer, rejecting offers that didn't match her mental picture perfectly. She was trying to direct the entire production instead of playing her part. I told her, speak your word, see it done, and let the universe arrange the details. She finally surrendered. Within days, a buyer appeared out of nowhere, someone who wasn't even looking in her neighborhood. The sale happened so quickly and smoothly it felt like magic. But it wasn't magic, it was law. The moment she stopped blocking the flow, with her insistence on controlling the method, the path cleared. Here's what I want you to understand. Your conscious mind can see about 3 feet in front of you. Your superconscious mind, that divine intelligence within you, can see the entire landscape. It knows shortcuts you've never considered. It knows people you haven't met. It knows timing you can't predict. When you demand that things happen your way, you're essentially telling infinite intelligence, I know better than you. And infinite intelligence, being polite, steps back and says, all right, have it your way. And then you struggle, because you're operating with limited vision and limited resources. But when you decree the end result and release the method, you're saying, I trust you to deliver this to me in the perfect way, at the perfect time, through the perfect channels. And infinite intelligence responds, now we're talking, watch this. This is why affirmations must be stated in terms of the completed manifestation, never in terms of process. You don't say, I hope to find a way to get money. You say, Infinite Spirit, open the way for my immediate supply. Let all that is mine by divine right now reach me in great avalanches of abundance. See the difference? One is begging and scheming, the other is commanding and receiving. And this is where most people completely lose the game. They say the words, they speak the affirmation, but inside, they're times watching asterisk. Inside, they're times checking asterisk. Inside, they're times measuring asterisk. Did it work yet? Is it coming? Where is it? I don't see anything. Maybe I did it wrong. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe God forgot about me. And with every single one of those thoughts, they're building a wall between themselves and their good. You see, the invisible world responds to time's assumption asterisk. Not hope, not wishing, not desperate wanting, but time's assumption asterisk. When you truly assume something is yours, you don't keep checking if it's real. You don't question it. You don't wonder if it's coming. When you order something online, do you stand by your front door every 5 minutes asking, where is my package? Did they send it? Is it real? Am I worthy of receiving packages? No. You assume it's on its way. You go about your life. And when it arrives, you're not shocked. You're simply receiving what you knew was already yours. That's the consciousness of the fulfilled wish. That's the vibration that brings times everything, times to you. But here's what we do instead. We speak our word. Then, immediately, we start narrating a different story. I affirmed for money, but my bank account is still empty. I declared love, but I'm still alone. I claimed healing, but I still feel sick. Every time you do that, you're canceling your own order. You're saying to the universe, never mind, I don't really believe it. The universe doesn't argue. It simply says, your word is law. As you decree, so shall it be. So you must hold to your word like a warrior. Not through force, not through struggle, but through time's quiet, immovable knowing asterisk. This is what I mean when I say, live in the end, don't live in the gap, don't live in the waiting. Don't live in the not yet, live as if it is already done. Because in the realm of spirit, in the realm of truth, times is times already done. That's why Jesus said, when you pray, believe you have received, and you will receive. Not believe that maybe one day you'll receive if you're good enough. Not believe after you see proof. Believe you have times already received it, asterisk. This is the law. This is how the invisible becomes visible. You see, most people are living from their conditions. They look at their bank account and say, I am poor. They look at their relationship status and say, I am alone. They look at their health and say, I am sick. And because they declare it with such conviction, the universe says, yes, you are right. Let it be unto you as you have believed. But the one who knows the Bryons the access, law, the one who understands how this works, refuses to bow down to conditions. You look at the empty bank account and say, I am abundantly supplied. Every need is met before I even ask. You look at the closed doors and say, my way is made clear. The divine plan of my life now takes shape in definite, concrete experiences leading to my heart's desire. You look at the diagnosis and say, I am whole, I am radiant health. Every cell in my body is filled with light. This is not denial. This is not pretending something isn't real. This is knowing what is, times more times real. The physical world is the world of effects. It shows you what you've been believing, what you've been speaking, what you've been holding in your consciousness. But you are not a prisoner of effects. You are a creator of causes. And the moment you change the cause, the moment you shift your inner speech, your assumptions, your declarations, the effect times must times change. It has no choice. I've watched this happen over and over again. A woman came to me once, frantic, in tears. Her husband had left her. The divorce papers were drawn up. It was over as far as the world was concerned. But she said to me, Florence, I know in my heart this marriage is blessed. I know we are meant to be together. And I said, then stop talking about the divorce. Stop telling everyone how he left you. Stop rehearsing the story of separation. Instead, morning and night, give thanks that your marriage is restored. See him in your mind's eye, happy, loving, at home with you. Speak to him in your imagination as though everything is healed. She did it, every single day. Even when her friends told her she was delusional. Even when the lawyers called. Even when her bank account showed numbers that made her stomach drop. She held the picture in her mind. Not just the house, but the times of what it represented. Safety. Beauty. A place where her children could grow. A space that reflected the abundance she knew was her divine right. And here's what I want you to understand about that word, delusional. The world will call you delusional when you dare to claim something they cannot see. They'll say you're unrealistic, impractical, living in a fantasy world. But let me ask you something. What's more delusional? Holding a vision of abundance while the universe rearranges itself to match it? Or accepting limitation as permanent when everything around us proves that conditions are temporary? The caterpillar doesn't know it will become a butterfly. If it could think, it would probably call that idea delusional too. 3 months later, her husband came home with news. His company was restructuring. They'd offered him a position in another state, DSB, with a significant raise, enough to qualify for the mortgage they needed. But here's the truly remarkable part. When they arrived in that new city, the first house the realtor showed them, the very first one, was nearly identical to the picture she'd been carrying. Same style, same feeling. Even the light came through the windows the same way. Coincidence, you say? I say, there are no coincidences. There is only divine law operating with mathematical precision. She didn't make that house appear through force of will. She didn't manipulate circumstances. She simply held herself in the consciousness of already having it, and the universe, which must respond to consciousness, brought it to her through what looked like a career change, a relocation, a series of lucky breaks. But none of it was luck, it was law, and that same law is operating in your life right this very moment. Every single thought you think is setting forces into motion. Every word you speak is a decree, whether you realize it or not. You are not waiting for your good to come to you. Your good is waiting for you to become a vibrational match for it. And here is the beautiful paradox that most miss entirely. When you stop chasing, you start attracting. When you release the desperate grip of need, you open your hands to receive. I've watched it happen 1,000 times. A woman spends months hunting for love, analyzing every text message, strategizing every encounter. Nothing comes. Then one day, she surrenders. She decides she's complete as she is. Within weeks, love appears not because she stopped wanting it, but because she stopped vibrating lack. A man chases a business deal with anxious phone calls and sleepless nights. The deal falls through. Later, he casually mentions his idea at a dinner party, relaxed and unconcerned. Someone at the table becomes his biggest investor. Same man, same idea, different vibration. This is not coincidence. This is law. The universe reads your energetic signature, not your words. You can affirm abundance all day long, but if you're checking your bank account with fear, if you're calculating how to pay next month's rent while you speak your affirmations, you're sending a split signal. And a split signal creates a split result or no result at all. I knew a woman who affirmed daily, "I am wealthy, I am prosperous." Yet she would panic every time an unexpected bill arrived. She would hoard small amounts, afraid to spend even on necessities. Her words said abundance, but her actions screamed poverty, and poverty is what remained. The shift happened when she began to act from the end. She treated herself to one small luxury she'd been denying herself: a bouquet of fresh flowers. Not a practical purchase, but a prosperous one. She felt wealthy buying those flowers. That feeling was the bridge. Within a month, an old debt she'd written off was unexpectedly repaid. Within 3 months, her income had doubled. She had shifted from resistance to reception, from struggle to flow, and that changes everything. Now, I want to share something that might challenge you, but it's something you must understand. Your demonstrations often arrive disguised. We have such rigid pictures of how our good must appear. We pray for prosperity, and we expect a specific check from a specific source. We affirm perfect health, and we insist it arrive through a particular treatment. We call in our soulmate, and we've already decided exactly what they'll look like, what they'll do for a living, where they'll take us to dinner. But infinite intelligence is far more creative than your limited human reasoning. Your good may come through channels you never anticipated, wearing clothes you didn't recognize, speaking a language you hadn't prepared for. I knew a woman who affirmed for the perfect home. She had the most specific vision: a brownstone in a particular neighborhood, with bay windows and a garden. She looked and looked, became increasingly frustrated. Nothing matched her exact picture. Then, a friend mentioned a completely different area she'd never considered. She almost didn't go to look. "That's not where my home is," she thought. But something nudged her, that still, small voice. She went. And there it was, not a brownstone, but a Victorian cottage with the most glorious light and a garden that took her breath away. It was more perfect than anything she'd imagined, but she would have missed it entirely if she'd stayed locked in her limited vision. Your word goes forth and cannot return void. But you must not outline the channels. You must keep your mind open, your vision flexible, your heart receptive. When you're too busy looking for the battleship, you miss the sailboat that's been sent to rescue you. This is why I always say, do not limit the Almighty. Your job is to hold the vision of the thing itself: prosperity, health, love, freedom, not the exact form it must take. Spirit knows infinite paths. Your reasoning mind knows only the few paths you've traveled before. Someone came to me once and said, "I need exactly $3,000 by next Tuesday for a particular investment." I've spoken the word. I've claimed it. Why hasn't it come? And I said, "You've tied Spirit's hands. You've told the universe not only what you want, but when you want it, how you want it, and what you'll do with it. You've left no room for anything better." She was indignant at first, but I asked her, what if Spirit wanted to give you $5,000 by Thursday instead? What if there's an opportunity twice as good as the one you're fixated on? Will you miss it because you're staring at Tuesday and 3,000? This is not to say we shouldn't be specific in our vision. Oh no, vagueness is faith's enemy too. But there's a difference between a clear vision and a strangled vision. A clear vision says, I see myself living in abundant prosperity, all my needs met, giving and receiving freely. A strangled vision says, I must have this particular job, at this particular salary, starting on this particular date, or nothing. You see the difference? One opens doors, the other closes them. The universe is lavish, beyond measure. It has resources you've never imagined. It has solutions you've never considered. But you must give it room to work. You must hold your vision steadily, yes, but hold it loosely enough that spirit can improve upon it. I've watched people hold so tightly to their pictures of how things should unfold that they walked right past the very thing they were praying for, simply because it arrived in different wrapping paper than they expected. The divine design for your life is always bigger and better than what you've imagined. Always. Your dreams are too small. Your hopes are too cautious. What you're asking for is a thimbleful, when Spirit wants to give you the ocean. So hold your vision, speak your word, claim your good. But then, and this is essential, release the details to infinite intelligence. Say, this or something better, God. That phrase, this or something better, is your safety net and your springboard. It means you're not limiting the universe to your small idea of what's possible. You're allowing for miracles beyond your imagination. I've seen the most remarkable demonstrations of this principle. A woman came to me desperate for a specific apartment. We worked together on her spiritual mind treatment. Within a week, that apartment was rented to someone else. She was devastated. But I told her, the universe has something better. 2 days later, she was offered a whole house for less rent than the apartment, in a better neighborhood, with a garden she'd always dreamed of. Her disappointment had been premature. Life was simply clearing the way for her greater good. This is why we must never mourn a closed door. Every closed door is protection or redirection. The universe is infinitely more creative than we are. When you say, this or something better, you're giving infinite intelligence permission to surprise and delight you beyond your limited human vision. Now, here's where people get tripped up. They make their claim, they release it to God, and then they panic. They start checking and rechecking, like someone who plants a seed and digs it up every day to see if it's growing. This is spiritual anxiety, and it kills your demonstration faster than anything. Once you've spoken your word, let it work. Faith means resting in the assurance that it is done. Not it will be done. It is done, in the invisible realm, waiting to manifest in form. Jesus said, therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. Received, past tense, not future. The spiritual reality precedes the physical manifestation. When you truly know this, you stop straining and struggling. You stop obsessively checking your bank account or your phone. You simply go about your business with a quiet knowing, a peaceful expectancy. This is the Sabbath rest. Not a day of the week, but a state of consciousness. You've done your spiritual work. Now you rest in faith while the universe does its work. I love to tell people, while you're waiting for your demonstration, live as though it's already settled. Because in the invisible realm, it is settled. You don't act desperate, you don't act anxious. You act successful, joyful, abundant, because those qualities are already yours in spirit. This is what I mean when I say act the part. Not pretense, not make-believe, but alignment. When you know your good is on its way, you naturally walk differently. You speak differently. You make decisions differently. I once worked with a man who was waiting for a large sum of money. He'd done his spiritual work, spoken his word, released it, rested in the Sabbath. But then he said to me, Florence, I've been turning down social invitations because I can't afford to go out. I said, that's your mistake right there. You're acting poor while declaring abundance. He looked confused. I explained, you don't have to spend money you don't have, but you do have to. Stop acting like a beggar when you're a child of the King. So he shifted. He accepted invitations. He dressed well. He carried himself with quiet confidence. He stopped apologizing for his financial situation and instead spoke with calm assurance about his prosperity. And within 2 weeks, the money came not from where he expected, but from a completely surprising source. You see, when you ACT faith-filled, you become a magnet for your good. The universe doesn't respond to your words alone. It responds to your entire vibration, your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, your energy. When every part of you says, I am provided for, I am abundant, I am cared for by infinite intelligence, then the universe says, yes, you are, and delivers the proof. But if your words say one thing and your actions say another, you're sending a mixed signal, and mixed signals create mixed results or delays. So, while you're in that sacred waiting period, ask yourself, am I living like someone who trusts God? Or am I living like someone who's terrified? Am I making decisions from faith or from fear? Am I generous, joyful, expectant? Or am I hoarding, worried, contracted? Your demonstration is watching you. It's waiting for you to become the person who's ready to receive it. Now, here's something that catches people off guard. When you ask for something specific, the universe might deliver it in the most unexpected package. You say, I want financial abundance, and suddenly you lose your job. Your mind screams, this is the opposite of what I asked for. But 6 months later, you're in a position that pays 3 times more, doing work you actually love. The demonstration wasn't wrong. The path was different than you expected. This is where spiritual students get tested, because the universe doesn't always wrap your good in the packaging you designed. Sometimes it comes through what looks like disaster. Sometimes it comes through an ending, a loss, a complete dismantling of what you thought you needed. I've seen this pattern hundreds of times. A woman affirms for her perfect home. 2 weeks later, her landlord sells the building and she's forced to move. She's devastated. But the forced move puts her in a neighborhood where she meets her future business partner, and within a year she's bought her own home, something she never thought possible. The demonstration was bigger times than her original request, but it required her to trust the process when it looked like everything was falling apart. This is advanced spiritual work, my dear. This is where you prove whether you really believe this law or whether you're just playing with pretty words. You've got to trust the intelligence that's orchestrating your demonstration. It knows routes you've never considered. It has connections you can't see. It's working in dimensions beyond your current perception. Your job isn't to micromanage how it comes. Your job is to hold the vision, maintain the feeling, stay in alignment, and then here's the crucial part, times follow the guidance when it comes. Asterisk, because guidance will come. An impulse to call someone, a sudden idea, an invitation that seems unrelated, a door closing that forces you toward another door. The universe speaks through intuition, through coincidence, through what you call random events. Nothing is random when you're consciously creating your life. You want the demonstration? Then you've got to be willing to be led. You've got to be willing to take the action steps that don't make logical sense, but feel right in your spirit. You see, the universe doesn't operate like a filing clerk. It doesn't say, oh, you filled out the request form properly, here's your blessing in 5 to 7 business days. No. It operates through intuition, through guidance, through those sudden urges that make you uncomfortable because they require trust. A woman once came to me in absolute panic. She needed her rent money, desperately needed it, and she had just enough set aside, barely enough to cover it. Then she got this strong urge, this quiet knowing, to give half of that money to a friend who was struggling. Now, logic said, are you insane? You need this money yourself. But her spirit said something different. She gave it. Against all common sense, she gave it. The rent was due in 3 days. She had no idea where the money would come from. But the very next morning, she got a call about a job opportunity she'd completely forgotten she'd applied for weeks ago. They needed someone immediately. Could she start that day? The payment? Double what she needed for rent. You think that's coincidence? I've seen this pattern repeat too many times to call it luck. The universe rewards movement. It rewards action taken in faith. But here's what most people miss. It's not just any action. It's not frantic, desperate scrambling. It's obedient action. It's following that inner directive, even when it makes 0 sense to your rational mind. And let me be clear, this isn't about being foolish. When you're truly connected to divine guidance, there's a peace underneath the fear. You might be terrified of the action, but there's a rightness to it. There's a knowing. That's how you tell the difference between ego and spirit. Your ego will push you from a place of panic. Spirit will pull you from a place of peace, even if what it's asking you to do is radically uncomfortable. So yes, you speak the word, you make the declaration, you stand on the promise, but then you watch for the guidance, you watch for the doors, you watch for the nudges. And when they come, and they will come, you move. Even if it looks ridiculous, even if your friends think you've lost your mind, because faith without works is dead, and works without faith, that's just exhausting hustle that leads nowhere. I'm about to share something with you that sounds absolutely ridiculous. Something that might make you laugh or think I've lost my mind completely, but I promise you, if you stay with me, if you really listen to what I'm about to tell you, your entire relationship with money is going to change forever, and I mean forever. I discovered something so simple, so almost childishly easy, that when I first heard about it, I dismissed it entirely. I thought it was nonsense. I thought it was one of those silly superstitions that desperate people cling to when they don't understand how the universe really works. But then something happened that I couldn't ignore, something so profound and so undeniable that I had to reconsider everything I thought I knew about prosperity and abundance. There's a specific number, and I want you to listen very carefully to this, a specific number that when you write it down and place it in your wallet, begins to activate something in your consciousness that literally starts pulling money toward you like a magnet. Now, before you roll your eyes, before you click away thinking this is just another gimmick, let me tell you about a woman who came to me 3 years ago. She was at the end of her rope. She had $17 to her name. She was facing eviction. Her children were hungry. She had applied for over 200 jobs and heard nothing but silence or rejection. This woman looked at me with tears streaming down her face and said, "Florence, I've tried everything. I've prayed, I've visualized, I've affirmed. Nothing works. I'm cursed. I'm meant to be poor." I took her hand and I said something that shocked her. I said, "You're not cursed, darling. You're just using the wrong language with the universe." And then I told her exactly what I'm about to tell you. I gave her a specific number to write down, and I made her promise not to tell a single soul about it. Not her sister, not her best friend, not even her children. This had to be a sacred secret between her and the infinite abundance of God. She looked at me like I was crazy, but she was desperate enough to try anything. So she went home, she wrote that number on a small piece of paper, and she tucked it into the fold of her empty wallet. Now, what happened next is why I'm making this video today. Within 48 hours, she received a phone call from a company she had interviewed with 6 months earlier. They said the person they hired didn't work out and they wanted her to start immediately, and the salary was exactly double what the original position had offered. But that's not even the remarkable part. Within the same week, she received a letter in the mail informing her that a distant relative she barely knew had passed away and left her a small inheritance. And then, just when she thought things couldn't get any stranger, her landlord called and said he was reducing her rent because he felt bad about her situation and appreciated that she'd always been honest with him even when she couldn't pay on time. When she came back to see me 2 weeks later, she was shaking. She pulled out her wallet and showed me that number, still tucked safely inside, and she whispered, "Florence, it worked. I don't understand how, but it worked." And that woman today, just 3 years later, she owns her own home. She runs her own business. Her children want for nothing. And she still carries that number in her wallet, and she still hasn't told a soul about it until she gave me permission to share her story with you today, without using her name, of course, because the secrecy is part of what makes this so powerful. Now I'm going to tell you something that might sound utterly mad, but it's the truth, and the truth has a way of being stranger than any fiction we could devise. When you carry something secret, something precious, something that represents a claim you've made on the universe, that secret becomes a seed planted in the dark, rich soil of the invisible. You don't dig it up every day to see if it's growing. You don't parade it around and ask everyone what they think of your seed. You leave it alone. You water it with faith. You protect it from the frost of doubt and the harsh winds of other people's opinions and limitations. Jesus himself said, "When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen." There's divine instruction in secrecy. There's power in the hidden work, the quiet claim, the silent knowing. I knew a man once who wanted desperately to be a successful inventor. He told everyone about his ideas. He went to parties and talked about what he was going to create. He asked opinions, he sought validation. And do you know what happened? Every single person he told found a reason why it wouldn't work. His brother-in-law knew someone who tried something similar and failed. His neighbor read an article about how the market was saturated. His own mother worried he was wasting his time. Within 6 months, he'd abandoned the whole thing. Not because the idea was bad, not because he lacked talent or resources, but because he'd allowed other people's consciousness, other people's limited thinking, other people's fears to infiltrate the sacred space where his dream was trying to take form. Compare that to Thomas Edison, who worked in relative secrecy, who failed thousands of times, and who didn't announce his intentions to the world until he had something to show for it. He protected his vision the way you'd protect a newborn child, keeping it away from harsh elements until it was strong enough to survive on its own. This is what the woman with the check understood instinctively. She wasn't being superstitious, she was being spiritually intelligent. She knew that her faith was tender, that her belief was still forming, and that the last thing she needed was someone telling her she was being foolish or unrealistic. You see, when you speak your desire aloud to others, you're essentially asking for their agreement, whether you realize it or not. And most people, I'm sorry to say, are not equipped to agree with your highest vision for yourself. They'll agree with what they think is possible based on their own limitations, their own experiences, their own failures and fears. But the universe has no such limitations. The universe doesn't know the word impossible. It only knows laws, immutable spiritual laws that work the same way every single time, regardless of who you are or what you've done or where you came from. Here's another secret about secrets. When you keep your vision to yourself, you conserve your energy. Every time you explain your dream to someone else, you're spending energy. You're defending it, justifying it, trying to make them understand it. And that's energy that could be used to actually manifest the thing itself. I learned this lesson myself years ago when I was first discovering these principles. I was so excited, so on fire with this new understanding, that I wanted to tell everyone. I was like someone who'd discovered a gold mine and couldn't stop talking about it. And what happened? People looked at me like I'd lost my mind. They dismissed me. They patronized me. They smiled politely and changed the subject. It hurt, I won't lie to you. It hurt because I wanted them to see what I was seeing, to feel what I was feeling, to understand that we'd all been living under such unnecessary limitations. But then I realized something profound. Their understanding wasn't necessary for my demonstration, not one bit. The universe didn't need their permission or their agreement. I only needed my own alignment, my own faith, my own willingness to act on what I knew to be true. And here's where so many people get stuck. They think spiritual alignment means waiting, sitting back, hoping, praying that somehow the universe will drop their good into their lap while they continue doing the same things, thinking the same thoughts, living the same patterns. That's not faith, darling. That's fear dressed up in spiritual language. Real faith is action. Real faith moves your feet. Real faith has you speaking differently, choosing differently, showing up differently even before you see the evidence. When I knew that apartment was mine, I didn't just visualize it, I prepared for it. I started packing. I looked at my belongings and decided what would come with me and what I'd leave behind. I walked past that building whenever I could, claiming it in my consciousness, blessing it, thanking it for being my home. People thought I was insane. Florence, you don't even have an appointment to see it. You're acting like you already live there. And I'd smile and say, in consciousness, I already do. Because that's the secret everyone misses. Your outer world is just the reflection of your inner world. By the time something appears in your physical reality, it's already old news. It was created in consciousness first, weeks or months before, by the thoughts you thought, the words you spoke, the feelings you entertained. This is why you can't keep dwelling on what you don't want and expect something different to show up. You can't keep telling the story of your struggle and expect abundance. You can't keep identifying with lack and expect prosperity to find you. Your consciousness is the cause. Your life is the effect. So, when I claimed that apartment in my consciousness, I wasn't being delusional. I was being deliberate. I was impressing my subconscious mind with the pattern I wanted to see manifest. I was aligning my inner reality with my desired outer reality, and the universe, which is nothing but law, had no choice but to respond. Within 3 days, everything shifted. The owner called. The appointment was scheduled. And when I walked through that door, it was exactly as I had seen it, exactly as I had claimed it. Not because I was lucky, not because I was special. But because I understood the law. Your word is your wand, your consciousness is your power. And when you dare to claim your good before you see it, when you dare to act as if it's already done, you activate forces that most people never tap into. This is what I mean when I say that signs follow, they do not precede. You don't wait for permission from your circumstances. You don't wait for everything to line up perfectly. You align yourself first, and then watch your circumstances rearrange themselves to match. But you have to be willing to look foolish. You have to be willing to take the step before the bridge appears. You have to be willing to claim your good in the face of contrary evidence. Most people aren't willing to do that. They want guarantees. They want proof. They want someone else to go first. And that's fine. But those people stay stuck in the same patterns, year after year, wondering why nothing ever changes. The ones who break free? They're the ones who dare to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled before they see it. They're the ones who speak the word of faith even when their bank account says otherwise. They're the ones who act on divine guidance, even when it makes no logical sense. They understand something that most people never grasp. Your external world is absolutely powerless to keep your good from you. The only thing that can block your demonstration is your own consciousness, your own mental acceptance or rejection of your good. I've watched people complain about their circumstances for years, blaming the economy, their boss, their family, the government, and all the while, their words are the very chains that bind them. Every time they say, "I can't afford it," they're decreeing poverty. Every time they say, "Nothing ever works out for me," they're closing the door to their good. Every time they say, "I'm always sick," they're renewing their subscription to illness. Your word is law in your universe. Not sometimes, not when conditions are favorable, always. Every single time you speak, you're either building your kingdom or tearing it down. You're either calling forth your good or pushing it away. And here's what makes it even more powerful. You don't have to convince anyone else of your word. You don't need your mother to believe in your success. You don't need your spouse to agree with your vision. You don't need your friends to validate your dreams. You only need to convince your own subconscious mind. That's your only audience. That's the only consciousness that matters in your demonstration. The woman who desires marriage doesn't need every single man in the world to find her attractive. She only needs to impress upon her subconscious mind that she is divinely irresistible to her right mate. The man who desires prosperity doesn't need the approval of economists. He only needs to accept in his own consciousness that he is a channel for infinite abundance. I knew a woman once who wanted to move to a beautiful home by the sea. Everyone told her it was impossible. She had no money saved. She had no prospects. The real estate market was impossible, but she did something remarkable. Every single day, she would close her eyes and feel the sea breeze on her face. She would hear the waves crashing. She would smell the salt air. She would give thanks for her home by the sea as though it already existed. And she spoke her word. Infinite Spirit, open the way for my immediate demonstration of my perfect home by the sea. I give thanks that it now manifests in perfect ways. 3 months later, a relative she barely knew passed away and left her a cottage by the ocean. Not money to buy one. The actual house, already hers. Deed and all. Now, was that luck? Was that coincidence? No. That was law. That was the word made flesh. That was consciousness becoming form. You see, the universe is not a democracy where everyone votes on whether you get to have your good. The universe is a monarchy, and you are the sovereign ruler of your own consciousness. What you decree with feeling and faith must come to pass. It's not personal development. It's not positive thinking. It's spiritual law, as reliable as gravity. But most people use this incredible power against themselves. They're hypnotized by appearances. They look at their bank account and decree lack. They look at their body and decree sickness. They look at their relationships and decree loneliness. And then they wonder why their life doesn't change. Your situation cannot change until your words change. Your words cannot change until your thoughts change. And your thoughts cannot change until you take dominion over your consciousness and refuse to accept anything less than your God-given good. This is not about pretending. This is not about denial. This is about knowing the truth that sets you free. The truth is that you are a spiritual being, created in the image and likeness of abundance, health, love, and joy. Anything less than that is the illusion. Your job is to speak the word that dissolves the illusion and reveals the truth. Now, I want to address something that many people struggle with when they first begin to practice affirmations. They feel dishonest. They say, "But Florence, I don't have the money yet. How can I say I'm prosperous when my bank account says otherwise? Isn't that lying?" This is where we must understand the difference between fact and truth. The fact might be that your bank account is low today. But the truth is that you are one with infinite supply, that substance is omnipresent, and that prosperity is your divine birthright. You are not lying when you affirm prosperity. You are stating a spiritual truth that supersedes the temporary fact. Facts are temporary, they shift and change. Truth is eternal. When you affirm the truth, you are not denying the facts, you are refusing to give them power. You are withdrawing your faith from the appearance and placing it where it belongs, in the invisible realm of spirit, where all things are already accomplished. Think of it this way. If a gardener plants a seed, she doesn't stand over the ground and say, "There's nothing here, this is empty soil, I see no plant." No. She waters the ground, she tends it, she expects the harvest. She speaks to that seed with expectation. You are growing, you are strong, you will bear fruit. She is not lying, she is recognizing the potential that is already present in the seed. You are that gardener. Your word is the water, and the seed is the divine idea already planted in your consciousness by God Himself. Now, let's talk about how to craft your affirmations so that they carry the greatest power. First, always speak in the present tense. Do not say, "I will be prosperous." That places your good in the future, always just out of reach. Say instead, "I am prosperous now." This is not wishful thinking, it is recognition of a spiritual truth that exists right now in the invisible. Second, make your affirmations personal and specific. General statements have general power, but when you speak directly to your own life, you activate the law with precision. Instead of saying, "Prosperity comes to people," say, "Prosperity comes to me now, under grace in perfect ways." Third, add the phrase, "under grace in perfect ways." This is essential. It ensures that your demonstration comes through divine timing and divine channels, not through strain, struggle, or harm to anyone. It invites the higher wisdom to orchestrate the details. When you say, "under grace," you are surrendering the how to God and simply claiming the what. I knew a woman who desperately needed housing. She had searched for months and found nothing she could afford. She was about to settle for a damp, dark basement apartment when she came to one of my meetings. I taught her to affirm, "Infinite Spirit, open the way for my right home. I am now living in a beautiful, light-filled space that is perfect for me, under grace, in perfect ways." She resisted at first. "But Florence," she said, "I can't afford a beautiful place." "Shouldn't I be realistic?" I told her. "Your realism is your prison. Speak the word for what is divinely yours, and let God handle the details." She agreed to do it. Every morning and night, she spoke her affirmation with feeling. She pictured herself in a lovely sunlit room. She thanked God in advance. And within 2 weeks, a friend of a friend contacted her out of the blue. A woman was leaving the country for a year and needed someone to house-sit her charming apartment, fully furnished, in a wonderful neighborhood for a fraction of the usual rent. This is what I mean by under grace in perfect ways. The universe has a million doors you cannot see. Your job is not to figure out which door will open. Your job is to speak the word and expect the way to be made clear. And let me tell you something else. When you speak the word, when you plant that seed of faith in the invisible, you must leave it alone. You must let it grow in the dark. This is where most people fail. They plant the seed and then dig it up every 5 minutes to see if anything's happening. Is it working? I don't see anything yet. Maybe I should try something else. Maybe I should worry a little, just in case. No, you water the seed with your faith, and then you walk away with confidence. You go about your day as if it's already done. Because in the invisible realm, time's already done. The moment you speak the word with faith, it's set in motion. The universe heard you. Now it's working out the details. I'll give you a simple example from my own life. Years ago, I needed a place to live. I had very little money, and the housing market was impossible. Everyone was competing for the same apartments, and landlords wanted references and deposits I didn't have. I could have spiraled into fear. I could have begged and manipulated and tried to force doors open. But I didn't. I simply said, "Infinite Spirit, open the way for the right home to come to me, under grace in perfect ways." And then, I let it go. I didn't rehearse my problems. I didn't tell every person I met about my housing crisis. I simply held the vision of myself happy and settled in the perfect place. Within a week, a friend mentioned casually that her aunt was looking for someone to house sit for 6 months, rent-free, in a beautiful neighborhood I could never have afforded. I didn't even know this aunt existed. I wasn't trying to make that connection happen. But the moment I stopped trying to control how times it would happen, the universe brought me the perfect solution through a channel I never would have thought of. That's the magic of under grace in perfect ways. The universe is infinitely more creative than your conscious mind. It sees connections you can't see. It knows people you haven't met yet. It has resources you don't know exist. When you try to figure it all out yourself, you're limiting the solution to what your little human brain can imagine. But when you turn it over to infinite intelligence, you open yourself to miracles beyond your wildest dreams. Now here's the thing, and this is crucial, you must be willing to follow the invisible lead. When that intuition comes, when that hunch arrives, when that coincidence appears, you must times move asterisk. You can't sit there and analyze it to death. You can't say, well, that seems too good to be true, or, that's probably not the real time's answer. The universe speaks in whispers and signs. It sends you the next step, not the whole staircase. Your job is to take that step without seeing the entire path ahead. This requires courage, this requires trust. This requires you to value the invisible guidance more than the visible circumstances. I knew a man who was praying for the perfect business opportunity. He was specific, he wanted something aligned with his skills, something that would, to provide abundantly, something that felt joyful. One day, he was at a coffee shop and overheard two people talking about a project. Something inside him said, speak to them. But his logical mind said, that's weird, they're strangers, you'll look desperate. He almost didn't do it. But he listened to that inner nudge. He introduced himself. Within 15 minutes, they were discussing a partnership. Within 3 months, he had the business he'd been praying for, and it came through a random conversation he almost didn't have. That's how the universe works. It will put the answer right in front of you, but you have to be awake enough to see it and brave enough to act on it. I remember a woman who came to me absolutely drowning in anxiety about her daughter's marriage. Every day, she'd call me with a new worry. What if he's wrong for her? What if they struggle financially? What if? I finally had to stop her and say, do you realize that every time you worry, you're praying for the thing you fear? She looked at me like I'd slapped her. But it's true. Worry is just faith in the negative. It's taking all that creative power you have and aiming it directly at disaster. I gave her a simple assignment. Every time she started to worry about her daughter, she had to immediately say out loud, my daughter is divinely guided. Her marriage is blessed and prospered. All is well. At first she thought it was foolish. The words felt hollow in her mouth. But I told her, say them anyway, your feelings will catch up. And you know what? Within 2 weeks, her whole demeanor changed. She stopped seeing problems everywhere. And interestingly enough, as soon as she stopped projecting disaster onto her daughter's marriage, the daughter started calling her more, sharing good news, seeming happier. The marriage hadn't changed her vision of it had. This is why I'm so insistent that you guard your words like a dragon guards gold. Because your words aren't just the sounds, they're containers of power. They're the molds into which your life force pours itself. When you say, I can't afford it, you're not just stating a fact, you're creating a reality. When you say, nothing ever works out for me, you're giving the universe its marching orders. It listens. It always listens. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Florence, what about being realistic? What about acknowledging problems? And I'll tell you what I tell everyone who asks me that. There's a difference between acknowledging a situation and giving it permanent residence in your consciousness. Yes, perhaps you have debt. Perhaps you're in a difficult relationship. Perhaps your body isn't where you want it to be. I'm not asking you to deny what's in front of you. I'm asking you to stop declaring it as your final reality. Instead of saying, I'm broke, try saying, I'm in the process of demonstrating abundant prosperity. Instead of saying, I'm so sick, say, I'm healing more every day. Perfect health is my divine right. Do you feel the difference? One statement locks the door. The other one leaves it wide open for something new to walk through. I once worked with a man who had been trying to sell his house for over a year. He dropped the price 3 times. He was bitter about it, talking constantly about the terrible market and how no one's buying. Every conversation was a litany of complaints. I said to him, as long as you keep declaring this house unsellable, it will be. You're putting a curse on your own property. He didn't like hearing that, but he was desperate enough to listen. I told him to bless the house every morning. To say, "The right buyer is coming. This house is sold to the perfect person at the perfect price." I told him to visualize handing over the keys with joy, to feel gratitude as though the sale had already happened. He thought I'd lost my mind, but he did it anyway. Every morning, walked through that house blessing it. 3 weeks later, 3 weeks after a year of nothing, he got an offer. Not just any offer, but one above his original asking price from a family who fell in love with the house the moment they walked in. They said they'd been looking for months, and this was exactly what they'd been praying for. You see, while he'd been cursing his house, someone else had been blessing the idea of finding it. Once he changed his tune, their energies could finally meet. You can't attract what you're silently condemning. Your words and your wishes must walk together, hand in hand. I once counseled a woman who couldn't understand why her friendships always soured. She'd come to me in tears, saying she wanted deep, lasting connections, yet every conversation I witnessed her have was peppered with little jabs. "Oh, you know how women are," she'd say with a knowing laugh. "They always stab you in the back eventually. Can you see what she was doing? She was blessing betrayal before breakfast. She was naming her friends traitors before they'd even had a chance to prove themselves allies. And the universe, that faithful servant, simply said, 'Your word is law,' and delivered exactly what she'd ordered. When I showed her this pattern, she was genuinely shocked. She thought she'd been protecting herself, building walls against inevitable hurt. But protection and prophecy are not the same thing. One guards against possibility, the other guarantees it. We changed her script entirely. Instead of 'women are backstabbers,' she began affirming, 'I am surrounded by loyal, loving friends who celebrate my success.' It felt awkward in her mouth at first, like shoes on the wrong feet. But she persisted. And within 3 months, not only had her existing friendships deepened remarkably, but she'd attracted 2 new friends who have remained faithful companions to this day. The word you speak creates the world you see. Now, here's where it gets particularly interesting and where most people trip themselves up without even realizing it. There's a tremendous difference between speaking what you want and speaking times about times what you want. Listen closely, because this distinction will change everything. When you say, "I want abundance," you're actually affirming the state of wanting. Want implies lack. Want means, "I don't have." So every time you declare what you want, you're reinforcing the very condition you're trying to escape. Do you see the trap? It's devilishly subtle. The universe doesn't hear your wishful thinking. It hears your declaration of truth. When you say, "I want money," the universe registers. This person identifies as someone who lacks money and faithfully maintains that identity for you. You've just ordered more lack with a side of longing. But when you say, "I give thanks for my immediate, perfect, and permanent supply," you're speaking from the place of having. You're not reporting an absence, you're claiming a presence. You're not describing a future hope, you're declaring a present fact. This is why Jesus constantly told people, "It is done." Not "it will be done," or "I hope it works out for you." He spoke from the end. He called things that were not as though they already were, and in that speaking, they became. I had a student once, a struggling artist who would sit in her cold studio and say, "I want to sell my paintings. I want to sell my paintings." Day after day, this was her prayer. And day after day, the paintings gathered dust. When she came to me, exhausted and discouraged, I asked her to try something different. Instead of wanting, I told her to affirm, "There is a perfect, immediate, and divine buyer for every painting I create. My art finds its perfect home and brings joy to those who receive it. I give thanks that my work is valued and I am abundantly compensated." She looked at me as though I'd suggested she sprout wings and fly. "But it isn't true," she protested. "No one's buying anything and they won't," I replied, "until you stop announcing that fact to the universe every single day." It took courage for her to make the shift. It felt like lying at first, claiming something that wasn't yet visible. But faith is evidence of things not seen, remember? She persisted in her new affirmation, speaking it every morning before she touched brush to canvas. 3 weeks later, a gallery owner walked past her studio, saw her work through the window, and came in. By the end of that meeting, not only had she sold 6 paintings, but she'd secured a spot in the gallery's upcoming show. The demonstration came not because she forced it, but because she had finally aligned herself with the truth of her being. She had moved from the consciousness of lack to the consciousness of abundance, and the outer circumstances rearranged themselves accordingly. You see, most people approach their financial demonstrations from the wrong end entirely. They say, when the money comes, then I'll feel abundant. When the gallery accepts me, then I'll feel worthy. When the client pays me, then I'll believe I'm valuable. But this is working backwards against the law. The feeling must come first, for feeling is the fertile soil in which all manifestation takes root. I remember working with a businessman who had built his company through sheer force of will and anxiety. He would stay awake nights worrying about cash flow, checking his accounts obsessively, always convinced that disaster lurked around the next corner. And indeed, his business reflected this consciousness. It survived, but barely. There was always just enough, never abundance, never ease. He attracted clients who haggled over every penny, partners who tried to cheat him, employees who stole from him. When he came to me exhausted and desperate, I gave him a simple assignment. Every morning, he was to sit in his office before anyone else arrived, close his eyes, and truly feel in his body what it would be like to have more than enough. Not to think about it or visualize it, but to feel the relief, the ease, the joy of absolute financial security. But that feels like lying, he protested. I'm in debt. My feelings would be false. I said to him, what I say to you now, your current circumstances are the result of your past consciousness. They are yesterday's news made visible. When you change your consciousness today, you are planting the seeds for tomorrow's harvest. There is nothing false about claiming the truth of your divine abundance, even when the bank account hasn't caught up yet. He committed to the practice. Every morning, 20 minutes of pure feeling, he would sit in his chair and breathe into the sensation of security, of knowing that divine supply was infinite and already his. At first, his mind fought him constantly, bringing up bills and problems and fears. But he persisted, gently returning to the feeling again and again. Within 2 months, something extraordinary happened. Not only did 3 new clients appear substantial clients who paid without negotiation, but his entire business atmosphere changed. The difficult clients either left or became reasonable. The suspicious partners became trustworthy. The employees became loyal and honest. He hadn't changed anything about his business practices or strategies. He had simply changed his consciousness, and everything external shifted to match. This is the secret that successful people know, whether they realize it consciously or not. They feel successful before the evidence arrives. They feel wealthy before the bank account reflects it. They feel worthy before the world acknowledges it. And because they hold that feeling steadily, the universe must deliver circumstances to match. But here's where most people stumble. They practice their new consciousness for a day, perhaps a week, and when immediate results don't appear, they say, "You see? It doesn't work." And they slip right back into the old familiar feeling of lack and limitation. I tell my students, spiritual law works with the same consistency as physical law. If you plant a seed in your garden, do you dig it up the next day to see if it's growing? Of course not. You water it, you give it sunlight, you trust the process. Some seeds sprout in days, others take weeks, but all seeds that are given the right conditions must eventually grow. Your consciousness is the seed, your feeling is the water and sunlight, and your demonstrations are the inevitable harvest. The law of manifestation doesn't discriminate. It doesn't ask about your past, your education, your failures, or your circumstances. It simply responds to the mental equivalent you're holding. I've seen people with every material advantage fail spectacularly because they carried poverty consciousness in magnificent homes. And I've seen people start with nothing and create abundance beyond measure because they refuse to accept limitation as their truth. What does this mean for you? It means that wherever you are right now is simply the outpicturing of where your consciousness has been. Not where it is going. Not what you're capable of. Just where it has been dwelling. And the glorious news is that consciousness can be changed in an instant. You don't have to wait years or decades. The moment you shift your inner conviction, you plant a new seed that must eventually demonstrate in your outer world. Let me tell you about a woman who came to me drowning in debt. Bill collectors were calling daily. She had lost her home and was living in a single room, certain that poverty was her permanent condition. Her words were filled with lack. I never have enough. Money slips through my fingers. I'm not meant to prosper. Every statement was an affirmation of limitation. I asked her to do something radical. For 30 days, speak only words of abundance. Refuse to discuss her debt, her lack, her limitations. Instead, affirm constantly, infinite supply flows to me. Freely. I am a channel of abundance. Every financial need is met before I even ask. At first, she thought this was madness. How could words change her bank account? But she trusted the law enough to try. The first week, nothing visible changed. The second week, she received an unexpected check from an old insurance policy she'd forgotten about. The third week, a former employer contacted her with freelance work at double her old rate. By the end of 30 days, she had received enough to cover her immediate debts, and more importantly, her entire countenance had transformed. She moved differently, spoke differently, expected differently. 6 months later, she was more financially secure than she'd ever been. The outer change followed the inner transformation exactly. This is the law in action. Your word is your wand. Every statement you make is a command to the universal mind. When you say, "I can't afford it," you instruct the universe in limitation. When you say, "Money comes to me easily and frequently," you open channels for supply. The universe doesn't argue with you. It simply says yes to whatever mental equivalent you're holding and speaking. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. What about positive thinking that doesn't work? What about affirmations that seem to go nowhere? Here's the truth. Affirmations that contradict your deep belief system create inner conflict, not manifestation. If you're saying "I am wealthy" while your entire being rejects this as false, you're simply creating noise, not change. True affirmation comes from a place of conviction, not desperation. The difference is feeling. An affirmation spoken with doubt is just words. An affirmation spoken with absolute conviction, with the feeling of already having what you declare, carries creative power. This is why I teach you to affirm from the place of already having received. Not "I will be prosperous someday," but "I am prosperous now." Not "I hope to be healed," but "I am already healed in divine mind, and I now accept this healing in my body." Feel the difference? One is begging. The other is claiming your inheritance. I've watched people pray for money while wearing the consciousness of poverty like a coat they refuse to remove. They say the words, but their vibration screams lack. They affirm abundance while checking their bank account 20 times a day in fear. You cannot fool the law. You cannot trick the universe. Your dominant feeling always wins. Let me give you something practical. Something you can use today. Before you speak your word, check your atmosphere. What are you feeling? What's the weather inside your consciousness? If there's desperation, stop. Don't speak yet. Desperation is quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. Instead, move into gratitude. Find anything, even the smallest thing, and genuinely appreciate it. The sun on your face, the breath in your lungs, the fact that your heart beats without your effort. Gratitude shifts your frequency faster than anything else I know. Once you feel the shift, and you will feel it, like coming up from underwater, then speak your word, not with force, not with pleading, but with calm authority. The perfect opportunity is mine now. My supply is endless and immediate. Every need is met before I even ask. Notice something? There's no explanation to God about how bad things are. There's no backstory, just the claim. When a prince enters his father's castle, he doesn't explain why he deserves to be there. He belongs. You are treating with the divine as royalty treats with royalty, because you are. Now here's where most people stumble. They speak the word, feel good for about 3 minutes, then spend the next 23 hours and 57 minutes contradicting everything they just claimed. They affirm abundance at breakfast and complain about bills at lunch. They declare perfect health in the morning and recite their symptoms to everyone by access. Afternoon. They claim their soulmate exists and then spend the evening telling their friend how all the good ones are taken. Your word must be guarded like a seed in soil. You don't dig up a seed every 5 minutes to see if it's growing. You trust the process. You protect it from the birds of doubt and the weeds of contradiction. This means watching what you say after you've spoken your word. I'm not talking about pretending everything is fine when it isn't. I'm talking about not energizing the problem anymore. There's a difference between acknowledging a situation and wedding yourself to it. You can know bills exist without making them your meditation. You can be aware of a health challenge without rehearsing it in every conversation. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. And where your energy flows, manifestation grows. Let me tell you about a woman who came to me drowning in debt. Every conversation began with her financial woes. She had turned poverty into her identity. It was her story, her excuse, her conversation starter. I told her, for 30 days, you will not mention debt to another soul, not once. You will only speak of abundance or nothing at all. She looked at me like I'd asked her to fly. But it's the truth, she protested. No, I said, it's the current fact. Truth is what God says about you, and God says you are abundantly supplied. Which will you give your voice to? She agreed, though reluctantly. The first week nearly killed her. She had to bite her tongue constantly. Her entire social life had been built on commiserating about money. But something happened. By week 2, she noticed opportunities she'd been walking past for years. A side job, a refund she'd forgotten about, a friend offering exactly what she needed. By week 3, the shift was undeniable. Not because circumstances magically changed, but because she stopped being a vibrational match to lack. She started receiving differently. That's the key word. Receiving. Not chasing, not controlling, not manipulating. She opened her hands and her heart, and life responded with a completely different offering. And this is where most people misunderstand manifestation. They think it's about adding more desire, more wanting, more intensity to their asking. But true manifestation is about subtraction. It's about removing the blocks, the resistance, the tight grip of fear that says, I must make this happen or I'll die. You don't manifest by wanting harder. You manifest by relaxing deeper. I've watched this pattern repeat itself in countless lives. A woman desperate for a relationship spends years chasing, performing, shrinking herself to fit what she thinks will attract love. Nothing works. Then one day, exhausted from the chase, she surrenders. She says, I'm done. I'm going to focus on myself, on my own joy, on my own fullness. And within months, sometimes weeks, love appears. Not because she stopped wanting it, but because she stopped needing it to prove her worthiness. The universe doesn't respond to desperation, it responds to alignment. When you're in lack consciousness, you're broadcasting a signal that says, I don't have. And the universe, being the perfect mirror that it is, reflects that back to you with more experiences of not having. But when you shift into abundance consciousness, when you genuinely feel grateful, complete, and trusting, you broadcast, I have. And life mirrors that back with more to have, more to receive, more to celebrate. This is why affirmations fail for so many people. They stand in front of the mirror, debt collectors calling, stomach tight with anxiety, and repeat, I am wealthy, I am prosperous, while every cell in their body screams the opposite. The words mean nothing if the feeling doesn't match. You can't lie to your subconscious mind. It knows what you really believe. What works is this: find the feeling first. Find any thought, any memory, any possibility that generates even the smallest spark of relief, of hope, of peace. Maybe you can't believe you're a millionaire, but can you believe that the universe has always provided what you truly needed? Can you remember a time when things worked out, even if not how you expected? Can you appreciate the roof over your head right now, the food in your pantry, the breath in your lungs? Start there. Start with what feels true, what opens your chest rather than tightens it. Because that opening, that softening, that tiny shift from contraction to expansion, that's where the magic lives. I once counseled a man who'd been trying to manifest a business success for 3 years. He'd done everything right according to the books, vision boards, affirmations, visualization, nothing. When he came to me, he was bitter, frustrated, ready to give up on the whole thing. I asked him one question. When you visualize your success, how does it feel? He paused. Then admitted, honestly, it feels stressful. Because I'm thinking about all the work it will take, all the ways it could fail, all the people I'll disappoint if it doesn't happen. There's your answer. He wasn't visualizing from fulfillment, he was visualizing from fear. His so-called manifestation practice was actually reinforcing the very lack he was trying to escape. We worked together to shift his approach. Instead of forcing himself to envision specific outcomes, he began practicing the feeling of being supported, the feeling of trusting his own abilities, the feeling of enjoying his work regardless of results. He stopped measuring his worthiness by external achievements and started acknowledging the value he already brought to every interaction. Within 6 months, his business tripled. Not because the strategy changed, but because he changed. He became someone who expected good things, who trusted his own capacity, who operated from fullness rather than fear. And that's when the universe had room to deliver what had deal. He's been waiting all along. The spiritual law doesn't care how desperately you need something. It cares about what you habitually expect. I watched a woman beg for partnership for years. Prayers, affirmations, visualizations, the whole arsenal. Nothing. Then she stopped trying to get a relationship and started living as though she was already cherished. She bought herself flowers. She made Friday nights special. She stopped treating her life like a waiting room and started treating it like the main event. Within 3 months, she met someone. Not because the universe finally heard her, but because she finally stopped broadcasting scarcity. She stopped being a vibrational match for "I am incomplete." She became a match for "I am whole, and love is natural to me." This is what most people miss. They think spiritual law is about asking prettily enough, about finding the right words or the perfect technique. They don't realize they're asking from a consciousness of lack, which only produces more lack. It's like trying to fill a cup with a hole in the bottom. You can pour all day, but until you address the hole, nothing stays. The hole is your underlying belief. The hole is the story you tell yourself when nobody's listening. The hole is that quiet voice that says, "Things like that don't happen to people like me." And until you mend that hole, until you genuinely shift that belief, the universe can't fill your cup. Not because it's withholding, but because you're literally unable to hold what you're asking for. I knew a man who inherited a significant sum of money. He'd been broke his whole life, always complaining about never having enough. Within 18 months, every penny was gone. Not through tragedy or bad luck, but through 1,000 small decisions that perfectly matched his consciousness of poverty. He didn't believe he deserved wealth, so wealth couldn't stay with him. The universe delivered exactly what he expected: temporary relief followed by inevitable loss. This is why I keep saying your consciousness is your fortune, not your wishes, not your hopes, your actual operating belief system. What you expect when you're not actively trying to manifest anything, that's the signal the universe responds to. And here's what makes this challenging. Most people don't know what they actually believe. They think they believe in abundance because they say affirmations and read inspirational books. But their actions tell a different story. Their panic when the bills come tells a different story. Their envy when someone else succeeds tells a different story. Your real beliefs are revealed in moments of pressure. When something goes wrong, what's your first thought? When opportunity knocks, do you instinctively trust it or suspect it? When you see someone with what you want, do you feel inspired or threatened? Those reactions, those immediate, unguarded responses, that's your actual consciousness. That's what's creating your reality. The good news is that consciousness can be changed. But it requires more than positive thinking. It requires a complete overhaul of your inner dialogue, your assumptions, your default settings. It requires you to catch yourself in the lie and choose the truth instead. Every single time. When the thought comes, "I can't afford this," you stop and choose differently. Not by denying practical reality, but by refusing to make a permanent identity out of temporary circumstances. You say, "I'm in the process of affording this," or "resources are on their way to me," or simply, "This situation is temporary." This isn't positive thinking plastered over a dire situation. It's a refusal to worship at the altar of appearances. It's a recognition that your word has power, and when you speak as though limitation is your permanent address, you're signing a long-term lease with poverty. I've watched people transform their entire financial reality simply by changing the conversation they have with themselves. Not by pretending money was there when it wasn't, but by stopping the constant repetition of lack as identity. Instead of "I'm broke," they learned to say, "I'm currently reorganizing my resources." Instead of "I'll never get ahead," they practiced "I'm building momentum." The difference might seem cosmetic, but it's architectural. One set of statements builds a prison, the other builds a bridge. And here's what happens when you make this shift consistently. You start noticing opportunities you would have missed before. Because your mind isn't constantly scanning for evidence of your limitations, it begins scanning for possibilities instead. The reticular activating system in your brain, that incredible filter that decides what's important enough for your conscious attention, gets reprogrammed from a lack detector to an opportunity detector. Someone mentions a side project, and instead of thinking, "I don't have time," you wonder, "Could this be a door opening?" You see an advertisement for something you want, and instead of the immediate shutdown of "I can't afford it," you ask, "How could I make this possible?" The shift in question changes everything. This is the practical magic of treated thoughts. You're not waiting for the universe to drop solutions in your lap. You're becoming the kind of person who sees solutions that were invisible to you before. Now, let's address the elephant that's probably sitting in your mental room right now. But what if I need to make a decision today? What if I can't just wait around for my thoughts to magically manifest money? Here's the truth that reconciles spiritual principle with practical reality. Treating your thoughts doesn't mean you become passive. It means you become strategic. It means you make today's necessary decision from a foundation of inner abundance rather than inner panic. If you need to choose between two job offers, you don't paralyze yourself waiting for a cosmic sign. You make the best choice available while maintaining an inner conversation that says, better is always coming. This decision is a stepping stone, not a ceiling. If you need to cut expenses, you do it wisely while affirming, this is temporary adjustment, not permanent defeat. I'm making space for increase. The treatment happens in the emotional energy you bring to the practical action. Two people can make identical decisions, identical budgets, identical sacrifices, but one makes them from a vibration of defeat, and one makes them from a vibration of temporary strategy. The person operating from strategy will see the way out. The person operating from defeat will only see the walls. This is why your internal narrative matters more than almost anything else in your financial life. Because that narrative determines what you notice, what you attempt, what you accept, and what you refuse. I knew someone who lost a job and had 2 months of savings. The old pattern would have been panic, desperation, taking the first offer out of fear. Instead, she treated every anxious thought that arose. She made a budget, yes. She applied for jobs strategically, yes. But internally, she kept redirecting her mind. I'm being guided to the right opportunity. Something better than before is finding me. She didn't get lazy. She worked harder than ever on her applications and networking. But she worked from faith rather than fear, and that changes everything about how you show up. She ended up in a position that paid 40% more than the job she'd lost, with better conditions and growth potential. Was it the affirmations alone? Of course not. It was the affirmations keeping her mind clear enough to recognize the opportunity, confident enough to negotiate well, and energized enough to make a powerful impression. The treatment of her thoughts created the internal conditions for external success. She became the match for the opportunity that was already seeking her. That's the critical distinction most people miss. They think the affirmation creates something from nothing, when actually it removes the mental blocks preventing them from receiving what life is already trying to give them. I once counseled a man whose entire business had collapsed. He'd lost everything, his company, his savings, even his home. When he came to me, he was drowning in shame and self-condemnation. Every thought was a rehearsal of his failures. I ruined everything. I'm a complete failure. I'll never recover from this. Now, I could have told him to affirm, I am a millionaire, or money flows to me effortlessly, and trust me, that's what he expected. But here's what I understood that he didn't yet. His consciousness was so saturated with failure vibration that any affirmation about success would bounce right off. It would feel like a lie, and his subconscious would reject it entirely. So instead, I gave him something much simpler, something his consciousness could actually accept. I learn quickly and apply wisdom to every situation. That's it. Nothing about money or success or redemption, just learning and wisdom. He looked at me like I was missing the point. But I need money, he said. I need to rebuild my life. And you will, I told him. But right now, your consciousness is locked in a pattern of self-punishment. We're not trying to leap from total defeat to complete triumph in one jump. We're building a bridge, one plank at a time. First, we shift you from I'm a failure to I'm learning. Can you feel the difference in those statements? He could. One felt like a prison sentence. The other felt like possibility. Within 2 weeks of steady repetition, morning, noon, night, and especially whenever the old self-condemnation started creeping back, something shifted. He attended a dinner party he'd almost canceled because he was too ashamed to face people who knew about his bankruptcy. But because his mind was no longer looping in failure patterns, he was actually present at that dinner. Actually listening. Actually engaging. Someone mentioned a problem their company was facing. The old version of him would have stayed silent, convinced he had nothing valuable to offer. But his affirmation had opened a tiny crack in his consciousness. I learn quickly and apply wisdom. So when an insight came to him, he shared it. That conversation led to a consulting contract. Not a fortune, just enough to start rebuilding. But here's the miracle. He recognized the opportunity because his mind was finally clear enough to see it, and he had the confidence to speak up because his internal dialogue was no longer telling him he was worthless. 6 months later, his consulting practice was thriving beyond what his old business had ever achieved. Same man, same intelligence, same skills, but completely different internal conditions. The affirmation didn't magically create the opportunities, they were always there. People always needed the expertise he possessed. But his consciousness had been too cluttered with self-hatred to recognize or respond to them. This is what I mean when I say affirmations work from the inside out. You're not trying to manipulate external reality through magical thinking. You're clearing the static from your internal radio so you can finally tune into the frequency where your good is already broadcasting. Think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to fill a cup, but your hand is clenched in a tight fist. No matter how much water is available, none of it can enter. Your fist isn't preventing water from existing, there's an entire ocean of it. Your fist is just preventing you from receiving it. An affirmation is the gentle instruction to your hand. Open, release, receive. The hand that refuses to open becomes a fist, and a fist can hold nothing new. I once knew a woman who clutched her affirmations like weapons. She would say, "I am abundant," through gritted teeth, her jaw tight, her shoulders hunched, as though preparing for battle. She wondered why nothing changed. I said to her gently, "My dear, you're affirming prosperity while wearing the armor of poverty consciousness." She looked at me, confused. "Notice," I said, "how you hold your body when you speak these words. You're braced for disappointment, you're protecting yourself from hope. The words are right, but the spirit beneath them is still afraid." An affirmation spoken in fear is like planting seeds while simultaneously pouring salt on the soil. This is why your times feeling state times matters more than your vocabulary. You can say, "I am at peace" 1,000 times, but if your nervous system is vibrating at the frequency of anxiety, the universe responds to the vibration, not the words. Think of it this way. If you're trying to tune into a radio station, you must match the frequency. You can't dial into 98.5 while insisting you want to hear the program on 101.3. The universe operates on the same principle. It doesn't hear your words, it feels your frequency. So before you speak your affirmation, take a moment to times become times what you're affirming. If you're affirming peace, breathe peace into your body first. Soften your jaw, drop your shoulders. Let your spine lengthen, then times speak the words. If you're affirming abundance, imagine just for a moment what it would feel like if you already had what you desire. Not the things themselves, but the times feeling, times of having them. The security, the ease, the lightness. Let that feeling fill you like water filling a vessel. Then times speak your affirmation from that fullness. This is not pretending. This is tuning the instrument before you play. And here's what I've observed over years of this work. The more you practice feeling the frequency of your desire before you speak your affirmation, the less desperate the affirmation becomes. It transforms from begging into stating fact. From future tense into present reality. "I will be prosperous" becomes "I am prospered." "I hope to be healed" becomes "I am whole." Can you feel the difference? The first is reaching across an imagined gap. The second is standing firmly on ground you've claimed. Now, I know what happens next. You practice this for a few days, and the old thoughts come rushing back like water returning to a drained pool. The doubt. The "yes but." The voice that says, "Who are you kidding? Look at your bank account. Look at your circumstances." This is where most people abandon the work. They think it's not working, and they return to their old mental habits like a dog returning to its vomit. Excuse my frankness, but it's true. What they don't understand is this. There is always times a lag between thought and manifestation. You plant a seed in the ground, and for weeks you see nothing. Does that mean the seed isn't working? No. It means the work is happening beneath the surface, in the darkness, where you cannot see it. Your affirmations are seeds. When you speak them, truly speak them, with feeling and faith, they descend into the subconscious soil and begin their quiet work. But if you dig them up every day to check on their progress, you kill them. This is why persistence matters. Not desperate, white-knuckled clinging, but gentle, consistent return. Say your affirmation once with feeling, and you've planted a seed. Say it daily for a month, and you've watered the garden. Say it for 3 months, and you'll see the first green shoots breaking through the soil. But you must not waver. You must not look at your current circumstances and let them convince you that nothing is happening. Your circumstances are old news. They're last month's thinking made visible. They're the lag, not the truth. Your current reality is just the echo of who you used to be. And if you keep reacting to the echo, you keep the old music playing. But when you shift your attention to the invisible realm, to what you're claiming in faith, you starve the old pattern and feed the new one. This is where people get it backwards. They think they'll believe it when they see it, but the spiritual law is the exact opposite. You'll see it when you believe it. Your belief is the bridge. Your faith is the ferry. Your inner conviction is the passport that lets the invisible cross over into the visible world. And this is why I tell you to live from the end result. Not toward it. From times it. Don't live like someone whose times trying times to be prosperous. Live like someone who times is times prosperous. Don't live like someone whose times hoping times to be loved. Live like someone who times is times loved. Don't live like someone whose times waiting times for the miracle. Live like someone who's already received it, because the spiritual realm doesn't respond to your effort, it responds to your assumption. Let me give you an example. I knew a woman who desperately wanted to get married. She'd been single for years, and she was lonely, anxious, convinced that love had passed her by. She tried everything, dating services, makeovers, affirmations, nothing worked. Because underneath all the trying, she was still living from the vibration of lack. Then one day, she decided to stop trying. Instead, she started living times as if she were already happily married. She bought herself flowers. She set the table for 2. She made space in her closet. She spoke to herself the way a loving partner would speak to her. She wasn't pretending. She was practicing *. She was training her consciousness to match the reality she desired. And within 3 months, she met the man who became her husband. Now, was that magic? No, it was law. She shifted her inner state, and her outer world rearranged itself to match. This is what the Bible means when it says, faith is the substance of things hoped for. Substance, not wishful thinking. Not fantasy. Substance. Your faith is the raw material out of which your reality is built. And when you live from the end result, you're not denying the circumstances, you're just refusing to let them have the final word. You're saying, yes, this is what's visible right now, but I answer to a higher authority. I answer to the law of faith. And that law says I can have what I claim with steady, expectant trust. Here's another way to think about it. Your subconscious mind is like a garden. Whatever you plant, it will grow. If you plant seeds of worry, you'll harvest anxiety. If you plant seeds of resentment, you'll harvest bitterness. If you plant seeds of faith, you'll harvest miracles. But here's the thing. The garden doesn't care what you plant. It just grows what you give it. It doesn't judge. It doesn't question. It just says, oh, you keep thinking about failure? Okay, here's some failure. Oh, you keep imagining abundance? Okay, here's some abundance. Your subconscious is neutral. It's the soil. You're the gardener. And most people are walking around wondering why their garden is full of weeds when they've been planting weed seeds every single day through their thoughts, their words, their focus. You've got to become a conscious gardener. You've got to guard your mental garden like your life depends on it, because it does. Every thought is a seed. Every word is a seed. Every image you dwell on is a seed. And you can't afford to be careless anymore. This is your life. This is your one precious incarnation. And you're standing in a garden with infinite potential, holding a bag of seeds, and the question is, what are you planting today? Because I can promise you this, the universe doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't care that you're tired or scared or that you've failed before. The universe only responds to what you're putting out right now, in this very moment. You want to know why some people seem to glide through life while you're struggling? It's not because they're luckier, or more talented, or more deserving. It's because they learned this one simple truth. You become what you think about most of the time. I've seen people turn their entire lives around not by changing their circumstances, but by changing their inner conversations. I knew a woman who was drowning in debt, absolutely drowning, bill collectors calling day and night, and instead of declaring bankruptcy, instead of spiraling into panic, she started a new practice. Every single day, she would sit quietly and say, I am a child of the universe. Abundance is my natural state. Money flows to me easily and joyfully. Now, I'm not saying the bills magically disappeared overnight, but within 3 months, she got a job offer that doubled her income. Within 6 months, an old friend repaid a loan she'd completely forgotten about. Within a year, she was completely debt-free. Was it magic? No, it was the law in action. She changed her vibration, and the universe had times to respond. You see, when you truly understand this law, when you truly get it deep in your bones, you stop being a victim of life. You stop waiting for permission. You stop looking for someone to save you. You realize, I am the creator. I am the artist. I am the one holding the paintbrush, and this canvas of my life is blank, and I can paint anything I want on it. But here's where people get tripped up. They think that means they have to force and push and manipulate and control. They think it means gritting their teeth and white-knuckling their way to success. And that's not it at all. True manifestation, true creation comes from a place of joy and ease. It comes from alignment. When you're aligned with your highest good, when you're tuned to the frequency of love and abundance and gratitude, things flow to you. Doors open. People appear. Opportunities arise that you couldn't have planned if you'd spent 100 years strategizing. I've watched this happen over and over again. Someone decides to stop forcing and start flowing. They let go of how it has to happen. They release their death grip on control, and suddenly, everything they've been chasing starts chasing them. This is the paradox. You have to care deeply about your desires while simultaneously being completely detached from the outcome. You have to plant your seeds with intention and then trust the soil to do its work. You can't dig up the garden every day to check if the roots are growing. And this, my friend, is where faith comes in. Not blind faith, not naive hope, but time's knowing asterisk. The kind of bone-deep certainty that what you've asked for is already yours in the invisible, and it's only a matter of time before it manifests in the visible. This is the faith that moves mountains. This is the faith that parts seas. This is the faith that turns water into wine and brings the dead back to life, not in some mystical, unattainable way, but right here, right now, in your actual everyday existence. Because here's what I've learned. The divine doesn't operate on your timetable. It operates on divine timing, which is always perfect, always precise, always exactly when it needs to be. You might be praying for something to happen next Tuesday, but the universe has scheduled it for 3 months from Thursday, because that's when all the pieces will align, that's when you'll be ready, that's when the miracle can actually take root and flourish in your life. I've watched people give up one day before their breakthrough. I've seen them turn back when they were standing right at the threshold of their miracle. They were so close, so incredibly close, but they couldn't hold the vision just one more day. They let impatience override their faith. They let what they could see with their physical eyes cancel out what they'd been holding in their mind's eye. Don't be that person. Don't be the one who plants the seed, waters it faithfully for 99 days, and then digs it up on the 100th day to see why it hasn't sprouted yet. Your constant digging, your constant checking, your constant doubting, that's what's preventing the manifestation. The seed needs the darkness of the earth to germinate. Your desire needs the darkness of the unseen to take form. This is where your spiritual practice becomes absolutely crucial. This is where you need prayer, meditation, affirmations, visualization, not as wishful thinking, but as disciplined mental training. You're training your mind to stay focused on the invisible reality until it becomes visible. You're training your consciousness to hold steady at a higher frequency, even when everything around you is vibrating at a lower one. Think of yourself as a radio. You can't pick up the symphony if you're tuned to static. You have to adjust your dial, your frequency, your vibration to match what you want to receive. And you have to hold that frequency. Not just for 5 minutes during meditation, but as much as possible throughout your day. When you wake up, tune to gratitude. When you encounter challenges, tune to faith. When you go to sleep, tune to expectancy. I knew a woman who wanted to heal a relationship with her daughter. They hadn't spoken in 5 years. 5 years of silence, resentment, hurt feelings, and pride. She came to me and said, "Florence, I don't even know if this is possible. Too much has happened. Too much has been said." I told her what I'm telling you now. Nothing is impossible with God. But you have to do your part. Your part isn't to force your daughter to call you. Your part isn't to manipulate the situation. Your part is to change your consciousness about the relationship. See it healed in your mind first. Talk to your daughter in your mind with love. Forgive in your mind. Ask for forgiveness in your mind. Build the bridge in consciousness before you try to build it in the physical world. She did exactly that. Every single day, she would sit quietly and have a loving conversation with her daughter in her imagination. She would see them laughing together, hugging, sharing meals. She stopped rehearsing the old hurts and started practicing the new reality. She held this vision for 3 months without a single sign that anything was changing in the physical world. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, her daughter called. Out of the blue. Said she'd been thinking about her mother, missed her, wanted to talk. Within 6 months, they'd completely reconciled. The relationship was healed, not just patched up, but truly transformed into something deeper and more beautiful than it had ever been before. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. But Florence, what if I've been affirming for weeks, or even months, and I still don't see results? What if nothing seems to be changing? This is where most people give up. They're standing right at the edge of their demonstration, and they turn around and walk away. Let me tell you something about the invisible world. Just because you can't see something happening doesn't mean nothing is happening. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing, do you? Of course not. You trust the process. You water it, you give it sunlight, and you know with absolute certainty that something is happening beneath the surface. Your word is working the same way. Every time you speak your affirmation, every time you hold to your vision, you are rearranging the substance of the invisible world. You are setting forces in motion that must eventually take form in your visible experience. I had a student once who was affirming for the perfect home. She had a very clear picture of what she wanted: a little house with a garden, lots of light, in a quiet neighborhood she could afford. She affirmed every day, "Infinite intelligence leads me to my right home," or "My right home is now revealed to me, under grace, in a perfect way." Weeks went by. Nothing. She'd look at listings, but nothing felt right. Months went by. She started to get discouraged. She came to me and said, "Florence, I don't think this is working. Maybe I'm asking for too much." I said to her, "The moment you doubt is the moment you block your demonstration. Your work is to remain steadfast. The universe is saying yes to you, but you must continue to say yes back." She kept on. And then, out of nowhere, she ran into an old friend at a grocery store. They got to talking, and the friend mentioned she was moving abroad and needed to rent out her house quickly to someone she could trust. She described the house, and it was exactly, down to the smallest detail, what my student had been visualizing. Same neighborhood she'd been drawn to, same kind of garden. Even the light coming through the windows was exactly as she'd imagined. Here's the important part: that house had been sitting there the whole time. The friend had only just made the decision to move 2 weeks before they ran into each other. The universe had been arranging all the pieces, getting the friend's new job offer, orchestrating the timing of the move, making sure my student happened to need tomatoes that particular afternoon, so she'd be in that particular store at that particular moment. All of this was happening in the invisible while my student was faithfully holding to her vision. You see, the delay wasn't a denial. It was the universe getting everything perfectly aligned. This is why you must never judge by appearances. The three-dimensional world is always the last to show the change. By the time you see something in your outer world, it's already an accomplished fact in the inner world. When you're tempted to give up, that's when you need to dig in even deeper. Double down on your faith. Increase your affirmations. See your good as already accomplished. Feel the joy of it now, before it appears. Because here's what I've learned after all these years. The thing you're asking for is already done. It's already yours in the spiritual realm. Your job is simply to accept it, to remain in a state of expectancy and gratitude, until it manifests in form. So today, I'm going to give you a specific practice that has never failed me when I've used it correctly. I call it the practice of divine indifference. Now, be careful here, this isn't apathy. This isn't giving up. Divine indifference is actually the highest form of faith. When you're divinely indifferent, you care about the outcome, but you're not emotionally entangled in times when it comes. You've given your decree, you've spoken your word, and now you rest in the absolute certainty that it's done. You go about your business with joy and expectancy, but without that anxious checking, that desperate monitoring. Think of it this way. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up every day to see if it's growing, do you? You water it, you give it sunlight, and you trust the process. You know that seed contains within itself everything it needs to become the full plant. Your job is simply to provide the right conditions and then let nature do what nature does. Your word is that seed. Once you've planted it in consciousness, once you've spoken it with conviction, your job is to provide the right conditions, faith, expectancy, gratitude, and then allow the divine process to unfold. The moment you start digging it up with doubt, the moment you start obsessively checking to see if it's working, you disturb the very process you're trying to activate. I remember a student who came to me absolutely frantic about money. She'd been affirming abundance for weeks, she said, but nothing was happening. I asked her to describe her days, and she told me that multiple times every day, she'd check her bank account. She'd look at her mailbox, hoping for unexpected checks. She'd search through her purse, hoping money had somehow appeared. She was in a constant state of monitoring and checking, and I said to her gently, "My dear, every time you check like that, you're really affirming the lack. You're sending out the vibration of, 'It's not here yet.' You're actually canceling out your affirmative prayer with your anxious behavior." What we needed to do, what she needed to do, was to give her word and then walk away from it in due faith, to act as if it were already done. Not in a fake way, not pretending, but genuinely resting in the conviction that what she'd asked for was on its way. So she started a new practice. Every morning, she'd make her statement, "Infinite Spirit, open the way for my immediate supply. Let all that is mine by divine right now reach me in great avalanches of abundance." And then this was the crucial part: she'd go about her day as if the money were already deposited. She stopped checking her account. She stopped the anxious monitoring. She thanked God in advance for her supply. And within 2 weeks, she received an unexpected inheritance from a distant relative she barely remembered. The money came in an amount greater than what she'd been worrying about all those months. What changed? Not her circumstances, not initially anyway. What changed was her consciousness. She moved from anxious striving into divine indifference. She planted her seed and trusted the harvest, and in that divine indifference, she discovered something extraordinary. Answers began appearing everywhere. Not because she was desperately searching, but because she had created space for them to arrive. Someone mentioned a book in casual conversation that contained exactly what she needed to know. An old friend called out of the blue with an insight that shifted everything. She stumbled upon an article that seemed written specifically for her situation. Synchronicities multiplied. This is how the universe works when you stop blocking the flow with anxiety. The moment you release your grip, infinite intelligence can work through channels you never imagined. I've seen this happen so consistently that it's become predictable. The person who stops obsessing over their love life suddenly meets someone wonderful. The business owner who releases their desperate need for a specific client finds 3 better opportunities appearing. The artist who stops forcing their work discovers their most authentic expression, flowing effortlessly. The divine plan always exceeds your limited human expectations. Always. But here's what most people miss. Divine indifference doesn't mean you don't care about the outcome. It means you care more about alignment than attachment. You care more about divine timing than your own timeline. You care more about the perfect unfoldment than your specific picture of how it should look. You're saying to the universe, "I desire this or something better. I trust your infinite wisdom to deliver what serves my highest good." That or something better is crucial. It keeps the door open for miracles that exceed your imagination. It acknowledges that you can't see the whole chessboard from where you're standing, but infinite intelligence can. I remember a woman who was desperately trying to sell her house. She needed a specific amount of money by a specific date. The more she pushed, the fewer offers came. Then she practiced divine indifference. She affirmed, "This house sells easily and quickly to the perfect buyer," or "Something better happens for my highest good." 2 weeks later, she received an unexpected job offer in another city with a signing bonus that exceeded what she would have made from selling her house. The company even offered to handle selling her property as part of the relocation package. She got what she truly needed, financial security and a fresh start, but through a channel she never could have orchestrated with her limited human planning. This is the intelligence we're working with. This is the power that responds to your faith. So stop white-knuckling your desires. Stop checking and rechecking for signs of progress. Stop trying to force doors open that aren't meant for you. Stop manipulating and scheming and strategizing from a place of fear. Instead, plant your seed with absolute conviction. Speak your word with authority. See the invisible reality more clearly than the visible circumstances. Then rest in divine indifference, knowing that what is yours cannot be kept from you. Your harvest is inevitable. The timing is perfect, even when it doesn't match your schedule. The method is perfect, even when it doesn't match your plan. The outcome is perfect, even when it doesn't match your limited picture. Trust the process. Trust the pause. Trust the preparation happening behind the scenes. Your manifestation isn't late, it's right on time. And when it arrives, and it will arrive, you'll understand why it couldn't have happened any sooner. You'll see how every delay was divine protection, how every detour was divine direction, how every no was clearing the path for a bigger yes.